This student goes online to search for the easiest way to die. However, he finds an ad for a high-class taxi service with the slogan, "Don't die, take revenge. We will help you." The boy bursts into tears. He picks up the phone to contact the high-end taxi service. However, thinking that it is just a joke, he stops again. The next day, the boy struggles to go to school on one leg since the other is broken. However, when he sees the 3 bullies in the class who often bully him in school, he cannot dare to enter the classroom anymore. Instead, he turns around and leaves. When he goes to his mother's fish shop, he sees his mother working. She is both mute and deaf, and is struggling to invite customers to buy fish with her advertisement board. This scene makes the boy feel even sadder, and he no longer knew who to turn to. He decides to call the taxi service he has just found last night. The person who picks up this phone call is Sung Chul, the director of the taxi service. He immediately assigns this task to the driver. The taxi driver drives the taxi to meet the customer boy. Upon reaching, he presses the button to open the car door so the boy can get into the cab. While sitting in the taxi, the boy asks the driver where they are going. The driver immediately tells him that they are going to take revenge. Then, the boy begins narrating his tearful story to this driver. His name is Park Young Min, and he transferred to a new school a few months earlier. During break time, 3 classmates intentionally approach him, making sarcastic remarks about the persistent fishy smell around him. Responding calmly, Young Min explains that the smell was because his mother ran a fish shop. Following that incident, Young Min becomes the continual target of senseless torment from the trio. Seeking help, he approaches his new teacher. However, instead of support, he receives advice to befriend his bullies. Adding insult to injury, the teacher criticizes the fishy smell on Young Min's clothes. As Young Min leaves the encounter, he is seized by the 3 bullies, who issue threats. They force him into joining them at a karaoke spot. There, they subject him to a brutal beating, strip him of his clothes, and steal all his money. On one occasion, when Young Min has nothing to offer, the boys shove him onto the road. As he falls on the road, a guy in the group runs his bike over Young Min's leg to make it look like an accident. They did that to get compensation from insurance the next day. This time, Young Min decides to fight back. He reports the incident to the police. However, instead of solving the case, the police officer only assigns the responsibility to the school violence committee. He then tells Young Min to go home and wait for the committee to take action. Young Min returns home only to see the bullies having dinner with his mother. They have arrived to give Young Min a warning. They even threaten to stab his mother, leaving him with no other option but to stay silent. When the principal inquires about Young Min's injury in the committee meeting, he hesitates. He claims he tripped while playing, concealing the truth out of fear of the bullies. Despite his attempt to shield himself from reality, his mother senses something amiss and encourages him to speak up. However, Young Min remains tight-lipped. After the bullies apologize for playing recklessly, the principal advises Young Min against taking the matter beyond the school premises. Returning to the present, the driver hands Young Min an envelope before dropping him off at a game station. Inside, he discovers instructions detailing the game number. As Young Min starts playing, a fairy within the game explains the rules. While the company works on his request, the taxi meter keeps running. He'll settle the fare once the task is completed. Depending on the circumstances, additional charges might apply. Lastly, Young Min is requested not to disclose the taxi game to anyone else. Unable to choose what he should do, Young Min decides to leave the place. However, rethinking how the bullies mistreated him, he presses the yes button and gives his consent to take revenge. In the underground basement, the taxi service team listens to his story. Sung Chul remarks that it might not be a big case for them, but for Young Min, it is a matter of life or death. The team member, Go-eun, begins her research and learns about one of the bullies, Sun Tae. His father donates money to the school, allowing him to do whatever he wants. The photographs of the bullies are printed out, after which Sung Chul briefs his team on the project. Though the perpetrators are all minor, it doesn't make their crimes any lighter, so they must carry out the task like any other. The taxi driver, Dogi, activates his meter and heads to a restaurant, initiating the next phase of the operation. There, he intentionally grabs someone else's food and mixes something in it. The food turns out to be that of Young Min's teacher. Dogi apologizes and gives him back his platter. The teacher falls ill because of the mixture, allowing Dogi to apply to the same school as a substitute teacher. Grateful for the timely help, the principal welcomes Dogi and assigns him to teach math, a subject he's not confident in. Upon introduction to the class, Dogi starts the routine by taking attendance. As predicted, Sung-tae disrupts the class, leading with a casual remark about the pleasant weather outside. After the class, two other bullies, Hyung-sik and Hak-soo, throw empty cans at Dogi and ask him for a favor. One of them asks Dogi if he has a cigarette, to which Dogi responds how a student can ask his teacher such a question. Sung-tae intervenes and begins ridiculing Dogi, saying he is just a part-time worker, not their teacher. To teach Dogi a lesson, he slaps his friend and then starts shouting that the new teacher has hit him. Acting along, Dogi tries to calm them down. However, Sung-tae's behavior worsens, and he grabs Dogi's wallet and steals his money. With the money, the trio flees from the area, leaving Dogi frustrated. Sharing his experience with Go-eun, Dogi expresses feeling mugged. However, Go-eun playfully mocks him, highlighting that his own students mugged him. Later that day, Sung-tae orders Hak-soo to get some goodies as he plans to impress some girls. Following orders, Hak-soo approaches an elderly woman, offering money in exchange for a favor. As minors, they're unable to purchase cigarettes, so they exploit the older woman's assistance. However, instead of fulfilling their promise of payment, Hak-soo hands over his leftover ramen soup and swiftly departs. The trio heads to a club to spend time with their girlfriends. Sung-tae pulls out the stolen cigarettes, reveling in the moment. Go-eun observes their activities through a hidden camera pan installed by Dogi. Curious, Go-eun questions how they can enjoy with ill-gotten money. Dogi explains the gradual descent of seemingly ordinary teenage boys into a darker path. While the trio enjoys their time, men in black suits approach them. The leader engages with Sung-tae, who hands over a sum of cash. It is revealed that these boys are more than just bullies. The next day, the friends are smoking cigarettes in the bathroom and bullying another of their classmates. While they are threatening him for money, Dogi appears from the toilet room. He pretends to have some work with the student. When Sung-tae refuses to let the student go, Dogi reminds him that he is their teacher and they must obey him. Despite Sung-tae's reluctance, Dogi manages to take the student with him. At Sung-tae's house, the team plans to teach Dogi a lesson. Sung-tae has an idea. The next day, the friends approach the older man to buy cigarettes. Fortunately, the older man has a stash specifically for students who can't legally purchase them. After obtaining the cigarettes, Hak-soo approaches Dogi, claiming that someone's parents are waiting for him in the library. As Dogi leaves, Hak-soo covertly inserts explicit content into Dogi's bag while keeping a watchful eye on the surroundings. Meanwhile, Sung-tae threatens a girl to trap Dogi. When she refuses to do that to a teacher, Sung-tae grabs her from her hair and warns her of the consequences of her disobedience. A few moments later, Dogi enters the library and begins finding the parents. However, he couldn't find anyone. Meanwhile, the girl removes her sweater and leaves the library, acting like a victim, shouting at the top of her lungs. She draws everyone's attention. When the female teacher asks what has happened to her, the girl accuses Dogi of having her nude photographs in his bag. Sung-tae is standing there laughing as he sees his plan working. The female teacher takes the girl with her, seeing Dogi as the culprit. On the other hand, the principal receives a call from an unknown number and learns about the incident. He is shocked and infuriated to hear this. While the female teacher is taking the girl to inspect Dogi's bag, she insults Dogi. She says she will ensure Dogi won't get to teach again. On his way to the teacher's room, Dogi winks at Sung-tae, adding to the complexity of the situation. Everyone is called to the classroom, where the principal rebukes Dogi for letting something wrong happen during his supervision. When asked where is Sung-tae's seat, Dogi points it out. Infuriated, the principal dashes towards Sung-tae's seat and begins unloading his bag. Inside, he finds the dirty magazines and pictures of the girl. Now, Sung-tae is portrayed as the culprit. The female teacher asks the girl what happened in the library, to which the girl responds that there was a bug in her clothes. As the teacher bursts out in rage at the girl, we see Dogi smiling at Sung-tae. A flashback shows how the magazine ended up in Sung-tae's bag. It turns out that when Hak-soo came up to Dogi to call him in the library, something happened beyond Hak-soo's imagination. His actions were being recorded by the camera pen Dogi had left on his desk. As he was putting magazine, he was being watched by Go-eun. She took matters into her own hands and entered the school wearing a uniform. Pretending to be a student, she went to the teacher's room and stole the magazine from Dogi's bag. After carefully putting that magazine in Sung-tae's bag, she called the principal and informed him about the pictures. As the truth comes out, the female teacher apologizes to Dogi, who now fake cries to gather her sympathies. After getting rebuked by the teacher and the principal, Sung Tae held his friend responsible for the incident. He accuses his friend of deliberately making a fool out of him. As he starts beating the boy, Hak-soo steps in and instructs him to calm down. However, Sung Tae gets infuriated and holds Hak-soo by the neck, warning him not to intervene in his matters. As the trio leaves the school, they witness two police officers finding the bag of cigarettes and arresting the older man. It turns out that the old man was selling marijuana. When questioned by the police about the sale of cigarettes, the old man identifies the bullies as the buyers. Before the police could catch them, they managed to flee from the scene. The old man is arrested, and to avoid the same fate, the boys dig the ground and bury the cigarettes there. The next day, Sung Tae addresses the class and threatens them, saying if anyone talks to the teacher, he will kill them. The class starts, and Dogi says good morning to everyone, but nobody answers him. Seeing Sung Tae is playing games, Dogi requests him not to do that in the classroom. However, Sung Tae keeps provoking Dogi, even frustrating him so he can show violence. Hak-soo keeps recording in order to catch the perfect moment when Dogi's rage gets out of control. It will help them get rid of Dogi easily. Realizing Sung Tae's game, Dogi announces that they won't study today but will be watching some videos. To everyone's shock, Dogi plays the video of the three bullies burying marijuana on the mountain. As the trio is shocked to see the video, Dogi turns off the TV, saying it was a mistake. After the school ends, the bullies ask Dogi about the video. Dogi responds that he went to the mountain to capture the beautiful view and found them burying the cigarette. So, he videotaped them. The boys keep explaining that they don't smoke weed. Dogi keeps playing along and assures them he won't reveal their secret to anyone. Later, the bullies head to the mountain and begin digging the ground, but they cannot find weed anywhere. At that moment, Sung Tae receives a call from Dogi, who reveals that he handed the weed to the police. He asserts his responsibility as a citizen, yet Dogi reassures Sung Tae that he didn't disclose any information regarding him. As Dogi persistently taunts Sung Tae with a mix of sweetness and underlying negativity, Sung Tae finds himself feeling helpless in the face of the situation. The next day, Dogi continues to irritate Sung Tae, demanding that he bring food for him. When Sung Tae declines, Dogi uses the previous weed incident as leverage, threatening to expose him if he doesn't comply. Fearing the consequences, Sung Tae reluctantly does whatever Dogi asks. To add to Sung Tae's frustration, Dogi even instructs him to keep the change for himself, further fueling his anger. The trio searches on the internet and finds that having weed is illegal, and they can end up in jail for 5 years. Scared to spend their lives in prison, Sung Tae calls Dogi and gives him death threats. As the trio returns home, they are shocked to see Dogi playing games with Sung Tae's father. Sung Tae is scared about getting exposed in front of his father. Later, Dogi enters Sung Tae's room and makes himself comfortable on the bed. He then asks the trio for money, 1.5 million each. If they tell anyone about it, Dogi threatens to inform the cops about the weed possession. Sung Tae agrees to fulfill his demand, but he puts a condition: he will decide date and time. After Dogi leaves, Sung Tae calls someone for help. In the afternoon, Dogi finds Young Min and encourages him to return to school starting next week. He's worried that skipping might become a habit that's hard to break. As a gesture of care, Dogi offers Young Min some food. Afterwards, Young Min assists his mother in closing up their shop. When asked about the food, Young Min discloses that his homeroom teacher was a generous giver. On their journey home, Young Min's mother affectionately holds his hand, expressing her unwavering love for her son. The following day, Dogi arrives at the school's rooftop and discovers a swarm of men dressed in black suits taking over the area. As he proceeds to get the money, Gohan asks if they should set it up, to which Dogi says yes. A clash erupts between Dogi and the men. With agility, Dogi evades each assailant, targeting their leader directly. Witnessing their leader under attack, the men retaliate. However, they prove no match for Dogi's combat skills. While Dogi is engrossed in combat, Sung Tae attempts a sneak attack from behind. However, when Dogi senses the impending attack, Sung Tae freezes, unable to make a move. Dogi continues to showcase his extraordinary prowess, swiftly neutralizing every thug in his path. When a thug tries to attack him with a flower pot, Dogi swiftly leaps, shattering the pot in midair. The trio stands stunned by Dogi's unforeseen abilities. After clearing the area of the men, Dogi shifts his focus to Sung Tae. As Dogi proceeds towards him, Sung Tae takes a step back. However, soon there is no place for him to move back. Dogi tells him that he cannot gather the courage to jump, but still, he pushes the people and hurts them. With that said, Do-gi kicks him, sending Sung-tae off the rooftop. As he focuses his attention on the other boys, they begin apologizing, begging Do-gi to spare their lives. Because of the fear, they even pee their pants. When Do-gi brings up Young-min's name, the duo was stunned. The next thing we know, they surrender themselves to the police, telling the officer how they bullied their friends. They urge the officer to lock them up as they don't want to end up like Sung-tae. It seems like Do-gi has taught them a good lesson, and they won't threaten, bully or beat anyone ever again. Later, Do-gi enters a bakery shop where he has kept someone. That someone is none other than Sung-tae. It turns out that when Goen asks Do-gi to set something up, she was talking about the giant inflatable bed. After he said yes, two of the team members, Kyung-gu and Jin-ian, inflated the bed. When Seung-tae fell, he landed straight on the bed. Because of the fear, he went unconscious. Do-gi contacts the gangster Sung-tae, whom he encountered on the rooftop, and lets him have a conversation with Sung-tae. Instead of assistance, the man issues a warning, advising Sung-tae not to contact him again and to listen to his teacher. Sung-tae's shock deepens upon hearing Young-min's name. Do-gi informs him that everything he eats is on Young-min, but anything he can't finish, he'll have to pay for. Furthermore, each pastry will cost him an amount equal to compensating Young-min for all the physical and emotional harm he caused. Sung-tae apologizes, saying that he doesn't have any money. This is when Do-gi reveals that he has found a job for him. By working there, Sung-tae can quickly settle his debts. Then, Do-gi warns Sung-tae that if he tries to escape, he'll catch him and make him cough up 10 times more. Confused about his situation, Sung-tae receives advice from Do-gi to recall the emotions of the students he once bullied. What he's going through now is payback. To mark this fresh start, Do-gi grabs a cake, lights it, and celebrates Sung-tae's new beginning. Afterwards, Do-gi meets Young-min, handing him the receipt for the deluxe taxi service. When Young-min expresses concern over the high cost, Do-gi advises him to pay whatever he can monthly. It will make him even stronger. Grateful for Do-gi's guidance, Young-min thanks him and exits the taxi. Meanwhile, Sung-chul approaches Young-min's mother, revealing that his organization has awarded Young-min a scholarship. Upon graduation and college entry, the firm will cover his fees and expenses. Overwhelmed with emotion, Young-min's mother repeatedly thanks Sung-chul for this generous scholarship. With Young-min's life returning to normal and a brighter future ahead, he returns to school. In his taxi, Do-gi keeps an eye out, ensuring everything's okay. Just like that, the deluxe taxi keeps playing a crucial role in helping people seek revenge and reclaim their lives. However, the team's journey wasn't a smooth ride. Personal tragedies motivated them to take on this unique job. Kyung-gu and Jin-ian experienced the heartbreaking loss of their siblings due to ruthless murders. Goen, too, lost her elder sister, driving her to join the deluxe taxi service with the mission to prevent others from destroying lives as hers was ruined. Director Sung-chul, who oversees the operation, also heads the Bluebird Victim Support Center. His parents fell victim to a brutal murder, and when he encountered the killer, emotions overcame him. Despite his attempt to confront the murderer, he was apprehended by the police. Shockingly, the killer escaped justice, leading to the beginning of the deluxe taxi service. As for Do-gi, he was in the army. One day, when he returned home, he entered the living area only to see his mother lying dead on the floor. She was also murdered. Her killer was caught. When he was ordered to show how he killed his victim, Do-gi couldn't hold back his tears. In a fit of rage, he knocks down the police officers in order to get to the killer. To incapacitate him, the police used a taser, knocking him to the ground. This was witnessed by Sung-chul, who couldn't relate enough to Do-gi's story. Sung-chul could feel his pain as he went through the same thing. This was when he decided to recruit Do-gi to his taxi service. At first, Do-gi refused to accept the offer, seeing Sung-chul's company as a mere taxi service. However, when Sung-chul showed Do-gi the picture of his mother's killer and encouraged him to take revenge, Do-gi agreed. With all the members recruited, the hidden headquarters was built underground, where the group meetings would held. This space served as the hub for group meetings, as well as the workshop where Kyung-gu and Jin-ian fine-tuned the taxi, integrating essential features. Goen, a skilled computer expert, took charge of hacking tasks, extracting crucial information from their targets. Back to the present day, the team gets another mission when a child rapist, Cho Do-chul, is released from the jail. Getting out, he apologizes to the people for his crimes and assures them he won't do anything again. However, nobody in the crowd wants him out of jail. They protest against it and throw things at Do-chul, until he leaves the area in a taxi. The taxi turns out to be that of Dogi's. While Dogi drives away, the media cars keep following the taxi to record Do-chul. One of the media cars changes route, and the driver stops the vehicle right in the middle of the road. The driver turns out to be Jean Ian, who has parked the car to stop the other media cars from chasing the taxi. Soon, Do-chul realizes that something is amiss as Dogi changes the route. He takes out his belt and tries to choke Dogi. However, using his hands, Dogi stops the belt from suffocating him. He then pulls Do-chul to the front and beats him up. When Do-chul tries to attack again, Dogi grabs a pen and stabs it right into his leg, incapacitating him. Soon, the deluxe taxi reaches a tunnel where another deluxe taxi is passing by. Dogi takes a U-turn and hands over Do-chul and his belongings to the other driver, who turns out to be Sun-chul. Kyung-gu and Jean Ian change the appearance of Dogi's taxi, removing the taxi tag and turning it into a simple car. Dogi then pushes a button and changes the number plate of the car. Now, the car that gets out of the tunnel is totally a different one. Do-chul is now in the back seat and is delivered to Miss Beck. She is the president of Paralyzed Credit Information Company and is a notorious godmother of the underground banking community. As Miss Beck is the only one who can deal with Do-chul, Sun-chul has decided to keep him under her captivity. Do-chul is kept in a cage so he can't escape. At first, he remains consistent in his aims and gives Sun-chul death threats. However, when Sun-chul warns him that he will tell his son-in-law about the supposedly dead father-in-law's reality, Do-chul gets on his knees. He begs Sun-chul not to ruin his daughter's family, and in return, he is willing to do whatever he says. On the other hand, Prosecutor Kang Hannah is carefully following the case of Do-chul's disappearance. She watches the CCTV footage outside of the tunnel and manages to recognize that the car that got out of the tunnel is different from the one that went in. In order to find out more about this unusual deluxe taxi, Hannah pays a visit to the nearest taxi driver company, where she bumps into Dogi. The taxi service turns out to be that of Sun-chul's. Beneath its facade lies the hidden headquarters of the deluxe taxi service. Instead of answering Hannah's questions, Dogi keeps urging her to move her car as it will disrupt their business. Amid their argument, Sun-chul arrives and takes Hannah to his office. Hannah shows him the CCTV footage of the taxi and informs him that a data run shows that the car belongs to Ha-soon at this address. Sun-chul reveals that he is his father, and he doesn't know if there is something still registered under his name. Unknown to the fact that Sun-chul's father is dead, Hannah continues warning him, saying that he might end up in a mess if he doesn't tell the truth. When Hannah's boss, Mr. Jin Woo, learns about it, he rebukes her for doubting Mr. Sun-chul. It turns out that Sun-chul is his close friend. Jin Woo scolds Hannah and tells her to apologize to Sun-chul in person. He further instructs her to stop obsessing over Do-chul's case. He warns her that if she ever brings him up again, she better prepare for the consequences. Meanwhile, we see a woman named Maria crying. She is injured, and it seems like she is ready to end her life. As she stands on the other side of the railing, her slipper falls into the river, scaring her even more. She keeps crying while saying that she doesn't want to die. Just then, her eyes are laid on the deluxe taxi service ad, saying, "Don't die, take revenge." Maria calls the number, and Dogi arrives to pick her up soon. Maria asks him where they are going, to which Dogi responds that they are going to take revenge. He then turns on the audio recorder and asks Maria what has happened to her. A flashback shows that Maria is an orphan and is intellectually disabled. It means she is 18 years old, but her mental age is around 1st to 2nd grade. As she was old enough to find a job, she bid farewell to her friends who had pitched in to buy a goodbye gift for her. Soon, a social worker picks her up from the church and informs her about her new job. She will be working in a factory and dealing with computer work. Maria is really excited as she always dreamed about doing a job to buy gifts for her friends. Approaching there, she signed a contract that she didn't read. At first, everything went well. Even the manager, Jung Gun, was very polite and understanding with her. Maria even shared with him how skilled she was in Excel. After the meeting ended, the social worker left the factory. Jung Gun showed Maria around, and after the tour, ordered her to descale the fish. Confused, Maria said that her work is related to computers. Still polite, Jung Gun assured her that he would give her computer work after that. However, Maria denied, saying that she was afraid of fish. Just then, the factory owner, Ju Chan, arrived. Upon hearing that Maria wasn't ready to work, he grabbed her from hair and submerged her head in the fish water. He then asked her if she was still afraid of fish. He then slapped Maria really hard, knocking her to the ground. He doesn't stop there. He begins hitting Maria with random objects. They intensify their torture by putting Maria in a drum with a freezing temperature. To decrease the temperature further, Ju-chan adds a bunch of salt and then closes the lid again with a sack. What they did next was even more horrifying. They opened the drum after a while and poured hot water on Maria, waking her up. After enduring so much torture, Maria agreed to work for Ju-chan. She would cry while describing the fish. One night, Maria tried to escape, and she did succeed. She found a police officer on her way and urged for help. The police officer turned out to be corrupt, as he took her back to Ju-chan's factory, where she was tortured again. They put her in the lid, while the police officer and Ju-chan had dinner together. Instead of helping the girl, the police officer splashed water on her already freezing body. He told her not to run away but to consider the factory as her home and work there without creating trouble. Adding to the distress, he made it clear he wouldn't rescue her in the future. To make matters worse, Jong-gun later called Maria into another room and subjected her to sexual assault. This horrifying experience led Maria to attempt suicide. After being taken to the hospital, she managed to escape and headed to a bridge with the intention of taking her own life once again. In the present day, Dogi drops her off at the game station and rides away. With the instructions in her hand, Maria begins playing the game. The screen shows if she wants to take revenge on the manager and the boss. Maria presses the revenge button, allowing all the team members to get the message that there is a mission ahead. They immediately leave their work and arrive at the underground area to discuss the mission. Kyung-gu requests Goen to change their pager as it seems old, and he wants to switch to a smartphone. However, Goen responds that smartphones are a bit risky, so they must stick to the pager. Soon, the team gathers to listen to Maria's story. Sung-chul pins the photographs of Ju-chan and Jong-gun to the board. He tells the team how the duo was known as a hard-working businessman in the community. They are helped by the police officer. That's why it is easier for them to cover up their crimes. Hearing her heart-wrenching story, Goen decides that they should immediately expose those businessmen. Other team members also agree with her, and just like that, another mission begins. Dogi hops into his taxi, sneaking out from the underground building. Meanwhile, Goen, Kyung-gu, and Jin-Ian prep their van, turning it into a food spot to infiltrate the factory. Dogi also scopes out the factory, checking its ins and outs. Later that night, when Ju-chan and Jung-gun get hungry, they grab a pamphlet of the chicken spot that Kyung-gu and Jin-Ian gave them earlier. Jong-gun thanks for the fast delivery, unaware that he has fallen right into their trap. Little do they know, the deluxe service team has spiked the food with sleeping powder. As a result, Dogi scales the factory wall and slips inside. Thanks to the sedative-laced chicken, Ju-chan and Jong-gun are peacefully asleep. With precision, Dogi inserts a USB into Jong-gun's phone, granting Goen access to all the crucial data. Dogi finds a safe in one of the rooms and asks for Goen's help to unlock it. With the data recovered from the phone, Goen manages to come up with the code. Dogi enters the code but finds nothing in the safe. Returning to the living area, Dogi picks up Jong-gun's phone only to find wrongly taken photographs of Maria. The discovery fuels Dogi's desire for revenge on her behalf even more. The next day, Dogi takes on the guise of a customer, entering the factory grounds. While he is exploring, Ju-chan intercepts him and inquires about his arrival. Sporting an innocent smile, Dogi claims to be in search of seafood. Guiding him to his office, Ju-chan offers coffee. Soon, Jong-gun joins, and they talk business. In the conversation, Dogi expresses interest in purchasing 50 drums of seafood. To prove his credibility, he unveils his briefcase, displaying the money at his disposal. Spotting the cash, the greed of the duo kicks in, prompting them to propose a deal. For 50 drums in 2 days, Dogi must make a 50% advance payment. Accepting the terms, Dogi seals the agreement with a signature. Unaware of the impending twist, Ju-chan and Jong-gun enthusiastically confirm the order. Unfortunately, half of the drums turn out to be infested with maggots. Ju-chan assigns Jong-gun the task of sorting and dispatching these tainted drums to schools and the military. Furthermore, it's revealed that they're importing this fish internationally, rebranding it domestically with a Made in Korea label to inflate profits. Kyung-gu and Jin-Ian manage to hear their conversation, allowing them to learn about their deceit. Later on, Jong-gun vents to the insurance worker, Jung-suk, about Maria. He insists on bringing someone less likely to escape. His comments displease Jung-suk, and she advises Jong-gun not to be overly selective. Ju-chan steps in, reminding her that if she's claiming 15% of their profits, she needs to execute her role efficiently. During their discussion about Maria, Jung-suk disclosed that Maria had contacted her once before and that she might contact her again. She asserts that as soon as she pinpoints Maria's whereabouts, she'll inform Ju-chan. Additionally, even in the event of Maria's demise, there's a 400 million insurance policy with Ju-chan as the beneficiary. In both scenarios, they stand to benefit. Unknown to them, their entire conversation is overheard by the deluxe service team, courtesy of the bug discreetly installed by Dogi. Goen reveals that Jung-suk has enrolled Maria in 10 insurance programs. Half of her monthly wage was used to pay her plans. Maria wasn't aware of this as she never got paid. Pretending to be a customer, Sung-chul visits the insurance company and asks to meet Jung-suk. After hearing about the insurance plans, Sung-chul leaves the office, saying that he will visit again. As Jung-suk is waiting for a taxi outside the office, Sung-chul offers her a ride. When asked if he's decided on the insurance, Sung-chul suggests discussing it during the ride as he's in a hurry. Agreeing, Jung-suk enters the car, only for Kyung-gu to render her unconscious with a taser. They tape her mouth and disguise her with a hat to conceal her identity. Upon waking up, Jung-suk pleads for her life, insisting she's merely a social worker. Sung-chul calmly informs her they're taking her to the factory, promising decent treatment. Despite her protests, Kyung-gu incapacitates her once more with the taser as she continues to scream. After sorting things out with Jung-suk, Sung-chul decides to torch his car and toss Do-chul's stuff into the flames. It's all part of his plan to throw off Hannah's growing suspicions. Later, he swings by to deliver some cash to Miss Beck as payment for her services. Meanwhile, Jong-gun lines up 50 barrels of seafood. However, on his way to the factory, a masked man, likely Dogi, intercepts him. Armed with a wrench from the truck, Jong-gun engages in a showdown with Dogi. Unfortunately, things take a turn for the worse as Dogi sends him flying through the air, crashing back down with a nasty neck injury. With the shipment still in limbo, Dogi drops a bombshell on the greedy duo. He places another order for 20 barrels, warning that this time if they miss the deadline, he will hit them with a double penalty for breaching the contract. Once Ju-chan seals the deal, Dogi makes his exit. Ju-chan dials Officer Kim, who has discovered Maria's whereabouts. As Officer Kim rushes, Dogi follows him discreetly. He fixes a metal frame to the front of his taxi and rams it into Officer Kim's car, maneuvering the frame into the vehicle and forcing it off course. With a twist of the steering wheel, Officer Kim's car catapults into the air, crashing down. Dogi swiftly retrieves a black box from the officer's vehicle and vanishes from the scene. Meanwhile, Maria joins Sung-chul's taxi company, taking on computer tasks. Goen acknowledges Maria's skills in Excel. During their conversation, Maria takes a pill. When asked, she discloses that Jung-gun gave her the pills for strength. Curious about the pill's purpose, Goen takes them for examination. Subsequently, she contacts Dogi, revealing that Jung-gun had been giving Maria birth control pills. Dogi's making a move to swipe those drums again. On Jung-gun's way back to the factory, Dogi blocks his path. But this time, Jung-gun isn't alone. He's brought back up. It turns into a scuffle between Dogi and the guys. Dogi is pretty slick with his kicks and punches, gaining the upper hand. Jung-gun tries to attack, but Dogi stops him and keeps landing punches until Jung-gun hits the ground. While all this is happening, Ju-chan calls Jung-gun but has no luck. Dogi's got Jung-gun and tied him to a pole. At first, Jung-gun yells for help, but then it sinks in that Dogi's the one behind this mess. Meanwhile, Dogi gets a call from Ju-chan, who mentions the guy he sent to fetch the drums has gone missing. He promises Dogi 70 drums by tomorrow. Dogi warns if he doesn't get them, there'll be a price to pay. With that, he hangs up, leaving Ju-chan worried sick. To dodge the penalty, Ju-chan hits the internet to hunt down some seafood drums, but with Goen keeping an eye on his search history, she steps in, pretending to be a seller and takes the order. Kyung-gu and Jin-ian play the role of delivery guys, dropping off the drums at Ju-chan's factory. They can't resist poking fun at Ju-chan, wondering why a seafood factory needs to buy seafood from other sellers. Once the duo splits, Ju-chan heads back into the factory, only to bump into Dogi. Curious, Ju-chan asks who he is, and Dogi coolly declares himself as their seafood thief. A brawl breaks out between the two. Armed with a stick, Ju-chan tries to strike. However, Dogi outmuscles him, lifting and slamming him against the wall. Ju-chan attempts a comeback, but Dogi proves too formidable. In the heat of the clash, Dogi's mask slips, exposing his identity to Ju-chan. Infuriated, Ju-chan lashes out, labeling Dogi as scumbag and launching an attack. Dodging the blows, Dogi delivers a powerful punch, sending Ju-chan crashing to the floor. In a tense moment, Dogi questions Ju-chan's morality, calling him out for exploiting people with disabilities. He points out how Ju-chan makes them work like dogs and assaults him daily. With Ju-chan's face bloodied, Dogi seizes him by the hair and submerges his head in water, mirroring the cruel act Ju-chan once inflicted on Maria. He then kicks him out of the factory and locks him up in the drum. He is being treated just like he treated others. Ju-chan is handed over to Miss Beck, who offers Dogi a job. She is impressed by Dogi's silent efficiency. She appreciates how he gets the job done without much fuss. Remaining true to his silent nature, Dogi listens to her conversation without uttering a word. With Ju-chan and Jung-gun out of the picture, the team steps up to determine the company's future. Sung-chul proposes a plan where the company's earnings directly benefit disabled employees. Turns out, Ju-chan had manipulated things and registered the company under a disabled worker's name, making it simpler for Sung-chul to transition ownership to the employees with disabilities. To cover the taxi fare, the team sells the drums and manages to gather the necessary funds. As the mission wraps up, Maria receives a heartwarming surprise from her orphanage friends. They have the toys she always wanted to buy for them. Stepping outside the factory, she spots a deluxe taxi driving away, revealing Dogi's kind gesture. He's the one who bought the gifts for the kids. On the other hand, Prosecutor Hannah receives a courier from an unknown address. The package has all the details of Ju-chan's case and the evidence against him. The police act swiftly and arrest Jung-gun, who is now severely injured. He thinks that Officer Kim, Ju-chan, and Jung-suk have all fled away and dumped everything on him. Now, the trio isn't considered missing but on the run. Later, Hannah and her assistant Miho go to the location where Chief Kim's car met an accident. She orders her assistant to get all the CCTV footage and even find any people who might have witnessed the accident. Later, Hannah receives a mail in which it is mentioned how the CEO of Udata Company, Park Yeon-jin, has assaulted a man named Young Min. Without delaying the matter, Hannah instructs Miho to set up a meeting with the plaintiff. Soon, a meeting is arranged with Young Min, who then narrates the entire story from the start. Miho turns on the recorder to document Young Min's statement. Later, Hannah is called in by her boss, Jin Woo, who tells her that the charges against Udata were dropped. He reveals that his direct senior began working for Udata. The senior contacted him and said Udata was his first case. That's why it was dropped. Hannah is not happy and demands to know who withdrew it. He refuses to tell her, though, but it is evident that the lawyers have threatened Young Min to withdraw the case. Hannah continues to argue that it isn't fair for Young Min, and that the real culprits must be caught. However, Jin Woo tears off the pages of the case file and tells Hannah to stop wasting her energy on the case. Furious, she storms out of the room. Just then, Sung-chul enters the room and immediately suspects something has happened. As Jin Woo goes to use the restroom, Sung-chul grabs the torn papers and gives them to Dogi, saying it depends on him whether to keep the papers or throw them out. In his taxi, Dogi opens the file and learns what happened to Young Min. It all kicked off when Young Min was a fresh recruit. Due to lack of sleep, he nodded off briefly and got scolded for it. Surprisingly, CEO Young Jin stepped in, excusing Young Min as he found his introduction video dull. But things took a grim turn when Young Jin's true colors emerged. He forced his staff into drinking, even resorting to physical violence. He punched director Young and pressured Young Min to do the same to manager Lee. He then rebuked Young Min when he couldn't gather the courage to slap his colleague. In a disturbing twist, Young Jin even ordered a girl to slap Young Min when he hesitated. The situation escalated when Young Min issued a refund to a customer. Despite it being the right action, the company higher-ups disagreed. Young Jin slapped Young Min in front of everyone, relentlessly belittling him for his mistake. This continued for 6 agonizing months until Young Min decided to leave. Taking a stand, Young Min posted online. He called out the bosses for their mistreatment and highlighted the simple truth that employees deserve respect too. After Young Min removed the comment, it didn't sit well with the chairman and the rest. Things took a bad turn when Udata's crew grabbed him. They whisked him off to an empty warehouse, demanding answers about the deleted message. Young Min explained he deleted it, but Young Jin felt embarrassed by its contents stuck in his mind. Consequently, Young Jin started hitting Young Min with a baseball bat. 45 strikes, matching the syllables of the message Young Min had posted. In the current day, Hannah and Miho reach Young Min's apartment but receive no answer at the doorbell. Inquiring with a neighbor, they discover that Young Min had an accident, and both he and his wife are now in the hospital. After obtaining the couple's contact information from the neighbor, they depart. Meanwhile, Dogi locates Young Min and learns about his condition. Shortly after, Hannah and Miho reach the hospital and find Young Min's wife. It's during this encounter that the wife discloses how her husband deleted the message, yet Yudata still targeted him. She reveals advising Young Min to seek legal counsel, emphasizing that he was enthusiastic about pursuing the case. Therefore, she questions why he would attempt to take his own life by jumping off a bridge. After a visit to the bridge where Young Min took a leap, Dogi heads to a gaming station, opting for the revenge route for Young Min. In an underground office meeting, the team delves into the details of Young Min's bridge jump. Goen reveals her inability to access CCTV footage, emphasizing that only a Yudata employee could. Dogi suggests two things: understanding why Young Min closed the case and uncovering why he ended up under the bridge. To achieve this, he decides to infiltrate Yudata as an employee to access the CCTV footage. Intrigued by Dogi's impressive resume, Manager Lee questions why he chose Yudata despite having numerous options. Dogi simply replies that Yudata is conveniently located near his house, which is why he chose to work here. He adds that he excelled as a top student in college and is keen on joining a company that holds the #1 spot in its field. This is precisely why he chose Yudata. The panel appreciates Dogi's response, promptly offering him a position as a manager. As Dogi expresses gratitude, he faces unexpected questions: if he can catch a chicken or does he drink. Unfazed, Dogi assures them he's up for anything they ask. Meanwhile, Hannah diligently works on Young Min's case, even though she's been explicitly instructed not to pursue it. She grapples with the puzzling reality that Yudata, despite not being a security company, has meticulously secured its information. While conducting the investigation, Miho discovers a past incident mirroring the current one, where CEO Young Jin was accused of assaulting an employee named Jin Won. In that case, Jin Won had initially filed a suit but later dropped the charges. To delve deeper into this connection, Hannah and Miho travel to a secluded location where Jin Won now resides. Inquiring with the locals, they locate him. However, upon their introduction, Jin Won becomes visibly frightened. At the mere mention of Chairman Young Jin, fear consumes him. He becomes agitated, insisting he knows nothing and demands they leave. When they persist, he abruptly flees. Unconvinced, Hannah senses something amiss and decides to reinvestigate the case thoroughly. While they can't press charges against Young Jin due to the dropped case, they aim to uncover other Yudata-related crimes. It will eventually lead them to evidence related to Young Min's case. The next day, Hannah heads to the Yudata company for a meeting with Young Jin, only to discover that visitor access is strictly prohibited. Learning that only employees have access to meet CEO Young Jin, she leaves the premises disheartened. On her way out, she spots Dogi entering the building. Recognizing him, Hannah approaches and inquires if he's left his job at the taxi service. Dogi explains that due to his boss's rudeness, he quit and now works at Yudata. Realizing she's found someone with access to the company, Hannah invites Dogi for dinner that evening. However, Dogi declines, mentioning a prior commitment with colleagues. As Dogi heads to work, Hannah feels happy at the encounter, confident that she can gain access to the company with Dogi's help. Meanwhile, as Dogi steps into the office area, he's taken aback by the lively celebrations. The workers enthusiastically cheer for Young Jin, who revels in the applause. In high spirits, Young Jin addresses the employees and announces a boost in the company's sales compared to the previous year. In an unexpected turn, he inquires if anyone is wearing brand new clothes. A worker steps forward, proudly stating he bought his shirt just the day before. To everyone's surprise, Young Jin dramatically tears the shirt off and hands the employee money for a new one. Adding an odd twist, he warns the employee that failure to wear a new shirt the next day will result in termination. Strangely, Young Jin proceeds to pour water on the employee, who seems oddly content with this peculiar celebration. Amidst the festivities, Dogi senses the peculiarity of the situation. Seizing the moment, he begins to explore the premises, searching for control rooms. Upon finding one, he connects something, granting Goen access to the company's CCTV cameras. Meanwhile, Goen informs Dogi about Hannah's unsuccessful attempt to arrange a meeting with CEO Young Jin, as the staff had refused her request. During the break, Dogi meets Goen in the parking area, where they discuss how there are CCTV cameras everywhere else except the strategic planning team. It is like they are in a blind spot. Realizing the importance of the strategic planning team to the company, Dogi decides to switch departments, but for this, he has to let people know who he is and get them to acknowledge him. He takes Goen's help in this matter. Using her hacking knowledge, Goen causes an error in the company's server. Manager Lee informs young Jin that their firewall is down and will need 5 days to recover. It is a big loss for the company as they make millions each day. Just then, Dogi gets up from his seat and tells young Jin that he can fix the issue in 10 minutes. He pretends to do some coding on the computer while Goen does the actual thing. Within minutes, the server springs back to life, and Dogi is hailed as a hero in everyone's eyes. In recognition of Dogi's efforts, young Jin offers him some cash. Instead of accepting the money, Dogi makes an unexpected request. He expresses his desire to join the strategic planning team, citing the rumors of their significantly higher pay. Young Jin chuckles at the request and hands Dogi the money as a bonus, calling him a funny guy before departing. Dogi's plan falls through, since joining the strategic planning team would have provided deeper insights into the company's core information. Now, he needs to explore alternative methods to gain access. While Hannah sits in her office, she repeatedly calls Jin-won, who keeps hanging up. Undeterred, she dials again, urging him not to disconnect. Finally connecting, she informs Jin-won that someone wishes to meet with him. Mentioning young men, she persuades Jin-won to visit the hospital. It's revealed that Jin-won had actually recommended young men to work at Udata. It took him a while to realize the true nature of the company. He was present when young Jin assaulted young men but felt powerless to intervene. Jin-won apologizes to young Min's wife for inadvertently guiding him into the company. Before departing, he confides in Hannah, revealing that the heart of Udata lies within the strategic planning team. On the other hand, the deluxe service team has shifted their attention to the strategic planning team. Goen's investigation reveals that the team comprises ex-convicts, alcohol addicts, and even individuals with gambling problems. This discovery prompts our heroes to question why these individuals, with such backgrounds, are part of the strategic planning team. Dogi directs Goen to prepare a new resume for him, intending to use it as a means to infiltrate this team. Taking an unusual approach, Dogi approaches Jin-Ian and issues a strange order: strike him in the face. Anticipating the blow, Dogi waits, but Jin-Ian hesitates, unsure how to proceed. In the midst of all this, young Jin becomes heavily intoxicated, reaching a point where he can't even stand. Director Young assists him to the car. As they are about to leave the parking lot, they witness Dogi engaged in a staged fight with Jin-Ian. Dogi pretends to be intoxicated, creating a mock brawling scene with Jin-Ian. In a dramatic display, he ridicules Jin-Ian and tears his shirt off, aiming to showcase his suitability for the strategic planning team. Kyung-gu signals to Dogi, who promptly exits the location. Despite recognizing the orchestrated nature of the dispute, Jin-Ian is left stunned by what transpired. Even in his intoxicated state, young Jin perceives potential in Dogi. He sees him as a good fit for the strategic planning vacancy. He tasks manager Lee with gathering more information about him. Later, Director Young reveals to young Jin that Dogi is divorced and has a history of alcoholism, painting him as a rather disgusting character. This information piques young Jin's interest, leading him to decide to recruit Dogi into the strategic planning team. He informs Dogi of his decision, offering him a credit card and the freedom to shop as he pleases. Ecstatic about his promotion, Dogi celebrates with his colleagues, thrilled about his new role within the company. As Dogi steps into the new department, a manager sends him a link to download a Udata app. It is exclusively intended for the strategic planning team. Trusting the instructions, Dogi downloads the app as instructed. However, Goen later enlightens him about the app's true nature. It's a spy camera app used for hacking and eavesdropping. Essentially, it grants the company access to Dogi's conversations whenever his phone is nearby. Goen assures Dogi that she can alert him when the app is active and when it's safe to speak freely. While exiting the building, Dogi unexpectedly encounters Hannah, who asks for his help. She discloses her plans to take down Udata and seeks Dogi's assistance. Unfortunately, young Jin spots Dogi conversing with Hannah through the CCTV cameras. Sensing something amiss, he activates the app on his phone. When Goen tells him that he is being recorded, Dogi pretends to take young Jin's side. When Hannah accuses young Jin of corruption and even murder, Do-gi defends his boss. He urges her to refrain from spreading false accusations. Recognizing Do-gi's questionable character, Hannah decides to distance herself. It leaves young Jin puzzled about the dynamics between them. As Do-gi prepares to leave for home, he's intercepted by young Jin. Engaging him in conversation, other men discreetly place a black cover over Do-gi's head, swiftly abducting him. Amidst the unfolding drama, Do-gi protests his innocence. However, Director Lee presses him to confess. He even brings up the possibility that Do-gi is here because his sister has taken her own life because of their actions. Do-gi denies this, even in the face of threats, with Director Lee brandishing a hammer. However, young Jin suddenly reveals that this was all a test. They wanted to gauge Do-gi's loyalty and ensure he wouldn't jeopardize the company. Young Jin declares Do-gi a genuine employee, referring to him as his child, and rewards him with a gift for passing the test. Do-gi expresses gratitude, and the others cheer him on for his apparent loyalty. Later, Director Lee shows a video of young Min to Do-gi, showing that if he ever betrays them, his end will be like young Min. Do-gi pretends to be terrified by the footage. However, later that night, he takes matters into his own hands. He fixes the metal structure in front of his car and then starts tailing Director Lee. Skillfully overtaking him, Do-gi executes a U-turn and accelerates toward Director Lee's car. In a desperate attempt to avoid a collision, Director Lee swerves, causing his car to crash. The vehicle flips and crashes to the ground. Seizing the opportunity, Do-gi retrieves a black box from the wreckage before swiftly driving away from the scene. Manager briefs Do-gi on their work details the next day. There's a special gallery server limited to the strategic planning team via card key. Do-gi's task involves uploading 1,000 fitting files from this gallery to generate income. Meanwhile, Sung-chul reviews Jinwon's case file and discovers something astonishing. Attempting to contact Goen, he finds she's occupied. Swiftly, he contacts Kyung-gu and Jin-ian, instructing them to remove Goen from the operation. His orders include ensuring Goen's inability to access Udata's server. As Do-gi uses the card key, Goen manages to hack into the system, gaining access to the server herself. However, what she discovers next leaves her completely stunned. It turns out that the strategic planning team is involved in selling illegal videos. Shockingly, among the top trends is a video featuring Goen's sister, Young-eun. Overwhelmed by emotions, Goen finds it hard to keep her composure. Simultaneously, Kyung-gu and Jin-ian arrive at the parking lot only to discover the van abandoned and showing signs of Goen's outburst. Despite their efforts, they can't locate her anywhere. This unexpected turn of events leaves Do-gi equally shocked upon realizing the true nature of Udata's operations. Checking on Goen's well-being, Sung-chul rushes to her house only to find chaos inside. The entire place is in disarray. Discovering that Goen has isolated herself in a room, Sung-chul attempts to enter, but she quickly locks the door. Upon learning about Goen's situation, Do-gi promptly arrives at the scene, but Sung-chul stops him from going inside. It's at this moment that Sung-chul discloses a shocking revelation to Do-gi. The woman featured in one of those illicit videos is none other than Goen's sister. In a flashback, we witness Young-eun's distressing experience when a private video of her surfaced. It began as an ordinary day at college until she noticed everyone's eyes fixated on her. Even a concerned girl approached, inquiring about her well-being. Confused by the sudden attention, Young-eun couldn't grasp why she was becoming the center of everyone's focus. It wasn't until later that she discovered a personal video featuring herself and her boyfriend had been shared online. Her boyfriend explained that his phone had malfunctioned, leading him to take it for repairs. He believed the shopkeeper was responsible for uploading the video. When Young-eun questioned why he recorded it, he responded that he wanted to capture their moments together out of love. Amidst Young-eun's tears, Goen coincidentally spotted her at the park. Misinterpreting the situation, assuming Young-eun had a quarrel with her boyfriend, Goen continued on her way to school. Afterwards, Young-eun decided to take matters into her own hands and approached the police station to have the video removed. To her dismay, the officer explained that the website hosting the content had servers located abroad. Consequently, he needed to submit an official request to Interpol, a process that would require some time. Faced with the waiting game, Young-eun spent the following months exhausting every possible way to delete and report the video. She even endured physical pain, with her fingertips bleeding from the persistent efforts, but nothing changed. Feeling trapped, Young-eun reached a heartbreaking point where she saw no alternative but to end her own life. In a tragic turn of events, she stepped in front of a car one day, bringing her life to a devastating end. Back to the present day, Sung-chul advises Do-gi to remain level-headed to see what they should tackle next. He believes that Goen is a strong woman, and she can get up on her own. The first thing we should do for Goen is make sure the video that killed her sister never sees the light of day again. Sung-chul believes that they should delete all the videos because one video means one life. Later, Do-gi bumps into Hannah in the Bluebird organization building. At first, she sees Do-gi with disgust, but seeing a Bluebird file in his hand, she decides to give him a second chance. She still harbors doubts about Do-gi's knowledge of Udata, and takes a chance to explain the extent of Udata's malevolence. It triggers Do-gi's rage. Already burdened by Goen's situation, Do-gi unleashes his frustration. He expresses that if individuals like Hannah fulfilled their responsibilities, there'd be no need to degrade those like him. Realizing her responsibility, Hannah places 2 papers on Jin-woo's desk, a resignation letter and a request to conduct an investigation. Knowing the value of a great employee, Jin-woo tears up the resignation letter and signs the approval for the investigation into Young Min's case. The next day, as Do-gi heads to his office, manager startles him with a playful slap from behind, and then invites Do-gi to join a meeting of the strategic planning team. Sitting down for a meal with his colleagues, Do-gi is surprised to see Jin-won among them. Young Jin is furious with the team for not installing hidden cameras in people's bedrooms. His anger shifts towards Jin-won, questioning why he returned to Seoul after being sent to a remote location. Jin-won offers an apology, clarifying that he came to Seoul solely to visit Young Min in the hospital. Young Jin warns Jin-won against returning to Seoul, and promptly dismisses him from the room. Soon after, Victor and his model, Choi Min, join the discussion, revealing their involvement in producing illicit videos. Amid the conversation, Young Jin questions manager about the absence of their most famous video, Young-eun's, from the top rankings. Overhearing this, Do-gi becomes attentive. Manager discloses that he removed Young-eun's video due to news of her suicide, enraging Young Jin. From Young Jin's perspective, this is the perfect time to capitalize on the video and make it legendary. He orders manager to upload the video immediately. To everyone's surprise, Victor reveals that Choi Min is the boy in Young-eun's video. It is now evident that the boy intentionally leaked the video as part of his job. Victor and Choi Min befriends girls, creates videos of them, and sells them online. Do-gi finds it difficult to contain his emotions upon realizing that Choi Min is the person responsible for Goen's sister's death. Choi Min casually mentions that he's completing a video that day, hinting that the girl he had trapped is becoming aware of his intentions. His plan is to conclude the video differently. As Choi Min and Victor depart from the office, Do-gi takes charge and instructs Kyung-gu and Jin-ian to follow them. Once the duo drives off, Kyung-gu and Jin-ian begin trailing behind. Before long, Do-gi reaches the location where the shooting is taking place. Meanwhile, the girl, who thinks she is modeling for rather modest clothes, realizes Victor's true intentions when he gives her lingerie to wear. Refusing this unexpected demand, she asserts it wasn't part of their agreement. Choi Min intervenes, forcefully taking her phone and threatening to distribute her nudes to her contacts if she doesn't comply. Despite her resolve to seek help from the police, Choi Min highlights the grim reality. By the time she gets any assistance, her private photos will have already reached her family, causing irreparable damage. While Choi Min continues his threats, we witness Do-gi disguised as a food delivery person. Wearing a helmet, Do-gi storms into the building, swiftly taking down a man in his path. The commotion grabs everyone's attention. While everybody is busy, Kyung-gu and Jin-ian rescue the distressed girl and guide her out of the building. A brawl erupts between Do-gi and the others. Despite being outnumbered, Do-gi skillfully incapacitates each goon in his way. As the confrontation intensifies, Choi Min resorts to a knife, prompting Do-gi to advance. With precision, Do-gi knocks Choi Min to the ground. Using his helmet, Do-gi delivers a powerful blow to his face. The relentless assault continues as Do-gi strikes Choi Min in the groin, inflicting pain, which is nothing compared to the emotional torments suffered by the victims. Manager arrives on the scene, sensing something is wrong. Upon recording the chaos, he discovers Do-gi as the assailant behind the beating. Do-gi doesn't hold back, knocking manager down also, and using his phone to record a video of him in pain. Seizing a camera, he delivers a forceful blow to manager. On the other hand, Young Jin visits Jin Woo's office with all of the senior prosecutors from big law firms. He meets Hannah in the office, saying he is here because she was looking for him. Amid their conversation, Jin Woo arrives and takes young Jin to his office. Hannah joins the meeting and begins pointing out their illicit video business, sharing that about 600,000 adult videos were shared on Udata's cloud drive in last year alone. Hannah's senior and young Jin's lawyer respond that anonymous people upload and download material on cloud storage, making it impossible to control everything completely. He gives Hannah a file mentioning that Udata increased the number of employees to monitor the server to prevent the sharing of adult content. The lawyer manages to portray young Jin as innocent, saying that his company takes appropriate measures to prevent the distribution of content. Young Jin, in a show of hate, insults Hannah, claiming she believes she owns the world. According to him, despite her achievements, she stands alone in the end, with no one truly supporting her. The next day, young Jin bursts into the strategic planning room, demanding to see manager, and he's visibly frustrated that his set of videos won't be uploaded that day. Losing his temper, he orders the other team members to take over manager N's responsibilities in his absence. As he storms out, Director Young rallies the team, motivating them to swiftly complete the task at hand. Amidst the chaos, Dogi joins the team, utilizing his card key to access the necessary data. He can't help but keep thinking about his last conversation with Sung Chul, where they decided to delete all videos. Taking the risk, Dogi permanently deletes all data. Suddenly, all the videos begin vanishing from the system and server too. Director Young calls someone, and in a matter of seconds, the data begins restoring. Shocked, Dogi calls Sung Chul and informs him that he deleted everything, including from the server, but the data resurfaced again. It seems like the data is like cancer that keeps resurfacing even if you get rid of it. Sensing the growing suspicion, Sung Chul advises Dogi to return to his desk before drawing any attention. Meanwhile, in Goen's absence, Kyung-gu and Jin Ian feel the strain of being tasked with various responsibilities, and they're growing weary of their roles. As Dogi returns to his table, Director Young informs him that young Jin is calling him. Dogi is brought in to meet young Jin, who questions him about the abrupt data deletion. It's apparent that young Jin views Dogi as a potential suspect. Before he can delve into further questioning, young Jin receives a phone call revealing that Hannah has initiated a raid on the building. Meanwhile, Hannah arrives at the strategic planning room, where Miho shows Director Young a search warrant. The room is evacuated, after which the police begin searching for the evidence from the computers. They try to find adult videos but are unable to find even a single one. They even check the server but there is nothing there too. Hannah stares at Dogi as if he has done something. Young Jin joins Hannah in the strategic planning room, and warns her that he will have his attorney deal with her. Later, young Jin calls Dogi and asks if he knows Hannah was going to come. He thinks that Dogi deleted the data because he knew Hannah was coming. When Dogi admits to it, young Jin issues 2 warnings. The first one is about keeping no secrets, and the second is a confirmation that Hannah should never be able to gather evidence against them. As Dogi exits the building, Hannah approaches him, pulling him aside for a conversation. A flashback reveals that Dogi was the one who sent Hannah a photo of the mass upload of illegal videos as evidence against Udata. Now, she believes that young Jin might have used Dogi to set her up. She thinks that the image he sent was fake, but Dogi responds with a no, saying that it was real. As Hannah is still being observed, Dogi has to be careful with what he says. He tells her not to be arrogant as she cannot expose Udata even with a lead. Soon, both Dogi and Hannah figure out that the server room in the building is a fake, and there's actually somewhere else that's the real base of operations. Later, we see Jin Won in the hospital giving young Min's wife some money for his treatment. While Jin Won and the prosecutors have a talk, we see Director Young noticing them together. He calls young Jin and informs him that Jin Won is with Hannah. Now, young Jin is evident that Jin Won is the one working with Hannah to expose them. He then calls Jin Won and informs him that he has sent a car to pick him up. It seems like Jin Won is ready to be bait for the prosecutors. Soon, they all leave the hospital. Meanwhile, Dogi gets an order from young Jin to pick up Jin Won. As he successfully picks him up, Hannah starts tailing their car. Simultaneously, Director Young is trailing them as well. To put an end to Hannah's pursuit once and for all, young Jin deploys men to deal with her. Soon, 2 additional cars join the chase, intent on harming her. Kyung-gu and Jin Ian are also part of this lineup. Recognizing the imminent danger to Hannah's life, Dogi opts for a strategic move. He changes lanes skillfully, disappearing from Hannah's sight. The 2 pursuing cars close in on Hannah, crushing her vehicle from the back and both sides. It's at this critical moment that Dogi unexpectedly appears, aiming to protect her. He skillfully maneuvers the car in front of one pursuer, quickly turning the steering wheel just in time to avoid colliding with an excavator. The trailing car isn't as fortunate and slams into the machinery. Now, it's the second vehicle's turn. Dogi activates some buttons, swiftly reversing the car in the opposite direction of the others. The headlights create confusion, making it hard for Hannah and the other car's occupants to see. Dogi makes a timely escape, leading the two cars to collide in an under-construction area. Director Young, who was in pursuit, leaves his vehicle but is left perplexed by the sudden turn of events. Meanwhile, Hannah safely exits the car, but Miho appears injured. While assisting Miho, she dials for an ambulance. Meanwhile, Jin-won presses Dogi for details on his loyalty, questioning whether he's affiliated with young Jin or not. Despite the inquiry, Dogi stays tight-lipped, leaving the air filled with mystery. Simultaneously, Kyung-gu and Jin-in arrive at young Jin's farmhouse, the very place Dogi is instructed to bring Jin-won. Sensing something amiss, the duo expresses concern, but Dogi assures them he can handle the situation solo. Upon reaching the destination, Dogi instructs them to swiftly locate and neutralize the server. Young Jin's henchmen escort Jin-won from the vehicle to young Jin himself. Despite the circumstances, Jin-won boldly confronts young Jin, vowing that he'll face the consequences of his actions. Enraged, young Jin smashes a wine bottle onto Jin-won's head, causing blood to stream down. Next, he commands his henchmen to transport Jin-won to their exclusive meeting chamber. Then, diverting attention to Dogi, he voices his discontent about the increasing chaos. He expresses frustration at the continuous disruption of his plans. In a typical young Jin fashion, he pours wine over Dogi's head and taunts him that he is trying to act like a fool, but he is not. Later, young Jin brings Dogi into the meeting area, where Jin-won is tied to a chair. He instructs Dogi to use a crossbow to kill Jin-won. Young Jin promises Dogi lifelong support and complete trust if he passes this test. Despite holding the crossbow, Dogi can't muster the courage to harm an innocent man. Disappointed by Dogi's failure, young Jin orders Director Young to complete the task. However, as Director Young prepares to shoot, Dogi intervenes, redirecting the crossbow upwards. The arrow narrowly misses Jin-won, allowing him to survive. Realizing Dogi's betrayal, Director Young strikes him unconscious with the crossbow. Meanwhile, Goen remains in her room, distressed by her sister's tragic death and the events leading up to it. Suddenly, she hears her pager signaling a request for help from the deluxe taxi service. Meanwhile, Dogi finds himself bound to a pillar. Kyung-gu checks in on him, concerned about his well-being. Dogi reassures them he's okay and urges them to locate the server swiftly. He points out that the server isn't indoors, prompting them to search elsewhere. Jin-in suggests the possibility of the server being outdoors due to the need for air conditioning in such a vast mine. Prioritizing the mission, Dogi advises them to focus on finding the server rather than worrying about his situation. On the other hand, Jin-woo arrives at the hospital to check on Hannah and Miho. Hannah seems unharmed, but Miho has sustained some injuries. When Jin-woo inquires about the situation, Hannah explains that she was tailing young Jin and was attacked during surveillance. She expresses her intent to rescue her informant, Jin-won, at a farmhouse, but Jin-woo intervenes. He insists she waits, emphasizing the need for proper preparations and a warrant before taking action. After Jin-woo grants her permission, Hannah heads to her office to secure a warrant. Meanwhile, Goen seeks out Sung-chul to learn about the ongoing operation against young Jin. Following their discussion, she heads to the basement. There, Sung-chul entrusts her with the keys to a bike so that she can support the team at young Jin's farmhouse. Simultaneously, Hannah gears up for the impending raid, organizing a fleet of police cars and an ambulance before setting off for young Jin's farmhouse. On another front, Kyung-gu and Jin-in are on the lookout for the server. Amid their search, Kyung-gu decides to assist Dogi inside the premises. Jin-in tries to stop him, but soon, both find themselves captured by young Jin's men. While being escorted indoors, Kyung-gu discreetly slips a razor under Dogi's shoes. As the duo was being restrained, young Jin and his men enter the scene. Fuming, young Jin demands to know Dogi's identity. Suspecting him of collaborating with prosecutor Hannah, Dogi denies any association with her, stating their relationship isn't exactly cordial, and clarifies he doesn't work alongside her. Still puzzled, young Jin presses Dogi to reveal who he is. Dogi surprises him by declaring himself a deluxe taxi driver, Perplexed, Young Jin questions whether he's Young-eun's boyfriend seeking vengeance. Instead of entertaining Young Jin's irrelevant inquiries, Do-gi demands to know the server's whereabouts. Annoyed, Young Jin removes Do-gi's Udata card, revoking his status as their employee. He then resorts to physically assaulting him. He viciously strikes Do-gi in the face and then targets his abdomen with a baseball bat, attempting to rupture his intestines. Meanwhile, Goen arrives at the location only to find the van abandoned. Swiftly taking control, she accesses her computer. It turns out that she needs to re-watch her sister's video repeatedly to track down the server. Overcome with emotion, she breaks into tears as she goes through the footage. Despite the pain, she persists until she finally pinpoints the server's location. Amidst the brutal torture, Do-gi's mouth starts bleeding from Young Jin's relentless assault. Despite the agony, Do-gi remains steadfastly silent about his identity, infuriating Young Jin further. Young Jin continues to hit Do-gi's abdomen, but Do-gi's question remains the same: where's the server? Young Jin's rage peaks, and he resorts to choking Do-gi. As he pauses momentarily from the beating, Do-gi receives critical information from Goen. She tearfully informs Do-gi about the server's location and urges him to put an end to her sister's suffering. Summoning every ounce of strength, Do-gi manages to free himself. As Young Jin attempts to resume the attack, Do-gi retaliates with a powerful punch to his face, swiftly incapacitating him. He then takes down each of Young Jin's henchmen, blocking his path. As Do-gi clears the room, he grabs a dumbbell and launches into attacking the men in the gallery, his energy driving each powerful blow. He relentlessly continues, taking down every man in his path until Director Young stands as the final adversary. Despite his heinous actions, Director Young pleads for mercy in the face of Do-gi's might. Meanwhile, Kyung-gu and Jin-ian manage to free themselves. Amid this chaos, Kyung-gu receives an unexpected call from a prosecutor accusing him of financial crimes. Shocked and unable to comprehend the allegations, Kyung-gu's fear paralyzes him, momentarily halting his escape plans. Jin-ian returns to assist him, forcibly dragging Kyung-gu outside. At the same time, Young Jin receives information that Hannah is en route to the farmhouse with a warrant. Before he can react, he's startled to witness Director Young being thrashed by Do-gi. While confronting Young Jin, Do-gi receives crucial information from Goen, pinpointing the server's exact location. However, Young Jin's men arrive, diverting Do-gi's attention. Using his remarkable combat prowess, Do-gi swiftly takes down each opponent in his path. Just as he frees himself from the assailants, he witnesses Young Jin securing himself in the server room. Rather than showing regret, Young Jin shamelessly asserts his dominance, taunting Do-gi that he can never ruin his plans. He boasts about having multiple servers and declares himself the victor of their game. Do-gi attempts to breach the door, but his efforts prove futile. It's then that Goen takes action, crashing the van directly into the server room and creating an entrance for Do-gi. Seizing the opportunity, Do-gi enters the room and grabs the crossbow, aiming and shooting Young Jin in the arm. Young Jin pleads for mercy, claiming he'll stop selling illegal videos. However, Do-gi senses it's more out of fear of his impending death than genuine remorse. Kyung-gu and Jin-ian swiftly make their way to the server room, strategically placing bombs throughout the mine. With their task completed, the deluxe taxi service team departs the farmhouse, narrowly avoiding the incoming police cars as they leave the area. In the chaos, Do-gi manages to tie Young Jin to a tree, but Young Jin breaks free just before the police arrive. As the officers start making arrests, Young Jin heads towards the server room. With only a minute left before the bomb detonates, Young Jin, facing the imminent destruction of his life's work, breaks down in tears. Meanwhile, as the deluxe taxi service team travels back to their office, Do-gi triggers the explosive device. An explosion rocks the area, engulfing Young Jin and causing injuries to some officers at the scene. On the other hand, Do-chul, a child rapist, finds himself in the operating room, where Miss Beck plans to unlawfully remove his eyes for sale. Before the doctors administer anesthesia, Do-chul springs into action. He subdues the medical staff and Miss Beck's right-hand man, making a daring escape. His first destination is Sung-chul, the person responsible for his capture. Upon arrival, he confronts Sung-chul, questioning why he targeted him when Sung-chul had no connection to the victims. Sung-chul attempts to retaliate with a baseball bat but ends up being stabbed. Before Du Chul can conclude the confrontation, Miss Beck's right-hand man intervenes, rendering him unconscious. Miss Beck calls for an ambulance, and Sung Chul is rushed to the hospital. The rest of the team arrives, anxiously waiting outside the operating room, hoping for their boss's recovery. The next day, Jin Woo visits Young Jin's farmhouse and discovers Dogi's employee card there. Meanwhile, the team watches the news reporting an explosion at Udata's server. As Dogi exits the room, Sung Chul awakens from anesthesia and immediately inquires about Dogi's whereabouts. Unbeknownst to Sung Chul, Dogi is headed to Miss Beck's hideout. He overpowers the guards and heads to Du Chul's cage but is unable to find him. He soon realizes that Du Chul was behind the attack on Sung Chul. As Miss Beck and her right-hand man return to the office, they find their men incapacitated and Dogi firmly seated in Miss Beck's chair. With a serious tone, Dogi demands answers from Miss Beck regarding the attempt on Sung Chul's life. He expresses his intent to confront the person responsible for harming someone he deeply cares about. Though aware that Du Chul was behind the attack, Miss Beck remains silent. Her pride is preventing her from spitting out the truth because Dogi took down her man. She warns Dogi that touching her boys or possessions will result in severe consequences, threatening him with the loss of his own hands. Later on, Jin Woo visits Sung Chul and inquires whether Sung Chul truly didn't see the attacker. While everyone assumes it was a robbery, the truth remains hidden. It was actually an act of revenge. Jin Woo's primary concern is his old friend's well-being. He then presents Dogi's employee card, discovered at Young Jin's farmhouse, questioning Sung Chul about Dogi's association there. Sung Chul guards the truth, explaining that Dogi had left the job to seek a different career path. However, he returned shortly afterwards, feeling unsuited for the Udata position. Worried about his friend, Jin Woo urges Sung Chul to confide in him if something troubles him. Later, in Sung Chul's office, Kyung-gu rushes in and asks Goen for a pen and paper. He is talking to the prosecutor who earlier accused him of financial crime. The prosecutor orders him to deposit his entire balance into a national bank account. He says that bank frauds are using his account to launder money. Once the case starts, all of Kyung-gu's accounts used by the bank frauds will be temporarily suspended. The suspended accounts will be used as evidence to arrest the bank frauds. Kyung-gu's help in the case means a national service, and he might be awarded for his efforts. Until the case is over, Kyung-gu will not be allowed to tell anyone about this. Jin tries to ask him about what's going on, but Kyung-gu remains tight-lipped. All he shares is that he will soon receive a national award for helping a prosecutor. Later, Prosecutor Hannah holds a press conference in which she shares the details about Young Jin's case. She informs the public how Udata created illegal videos, how they sell them, and how they further made a digital undertaker business with which they extracted money from their victims to delete the videos they uploaded. She also reveals that the case isn't closed yet as Young Jin and 3 executives are missing. She believes they are on the run. As the investigation regarding the explosion is still taking place, she can't disclose more about the case. Miho congratulates Hannah for her hard work, saying that all the reporters are praising her work. However, Hannah isn't satisfied. According to her, someone had already ended the case by the time she got to the scene. It is evident that there is someone who is solving their cases, and they can't even catch them. Jin Woo calls Hannah aside and tells her that he has found Dogi's employee card at Young Jin's farmhouse, indicating growing suspicion about Dogi's identity. The duo appears to be delving into Dogi's mysterious background. Later that day, Dogi returns home only to find Hannah in his apartment. She engages in a conversation with Dogi, informing him about Udata's crimes. She tells Dogi about the crimes committed by the strategic planning team, raising fingers on Dogi since he was also a part of it. Dogi responds that if she is here to arrest her, since Dogi even sent in a tip, she has decided not to take action against him. Hannah sees around Dogi's apartment and then comes to the point. She shows Dogi his employee card and asks why it is found in Young Jin's farmhouse. Dogi reveals that he threw out the card, thinking of it as trash as he quit the job. He claims that he doesn't remember where he threw his trash. Before leaving, Hannah asks him if he is allowed to treat the taxi like his own car, and she has seen one parked outside his house. She even asks Dogi if he has only one car, to which Dogi says yes. However, Hannah catches Dogi in a lie, having seen 2 sets of car keys in his home. Sensing deception, she tasks Miho with obtaining Dogi's phone records from the day Du Chul was released up until the present. On the other hand, Kyung-gu arrives at the police station to file a complaint. It unravels that the prosecutor who contacted him had stolen all his money in a voice phishing scam. and Kyung-gu unwittingly fell prey to it. Jin-Ian expresses anger at Kyung-gu, questioning how to trust a caller like that. Kyung-gu fires back, suggesting that Jin-Ian should have intervened. Upon entering the police station, they encounter other victims of voice phishing, all sharing their harrowing experiences. An elderly woman recounts how her hard-earned savings for her grandchild were stolen. Another woman reveals falling for a call about her daughter's accident and sending money for immediate treatment. A distraught couple is embroiled in a dispute after losing their savings in an attempt to save their son's life. Upon reporting their ordeal to the police officer, they're directed to the registration table to document their complaint. As Kyung-gu flips open the register, he finds his case number listed as the 158th complaint. Shock sets in as he witnesses the staggering number of people affected by voice phishing. Quickly writing down his name, he departs the police station. Exiting, they spot the same older woman who had complained earlier about voice phishing. Suddenly, she attempts to end her life by stepping in front of a truck. Acting swiftly, Kyung-gu leaps out of the car, intervening just in time to save her. Tears stream down the woman's face as she expresses that she doesn't want to live. She pleads with Kyung-gu to assist her in reclaiming her lost money. In the underground office, Goen approaches Kyung-gu and asks if he has given their ads in the police station, as 30 people have called her for revenge this morning. It turns out that Kyung-gu took a picture of the register and then sent all of them the deluxe taxi company revenge ad. He tells Goen that they all are victims and need help. Kyung-gu redirects his focus to Sung-chul, providing a comprehensive overview of the case. Taking on the role of a detective, he outlines the volume of voice phishing cases and the substantial financial losses sustained. Sung-chul promptly takes charge of the case, emphasizing that victims of voice phishing are unfairly stigmatized despite being exploited by fraudsters. The investigation begins, and soon, Goen becomes a target of a fraudulent call. Playing along, she follows instructions to leave money in a locker. As the recipient arrives to collect the money, Dogi pursues him. However, the man who takes the money deposits the envelope in a different locker, which is subsequently seized by another individual. This intricate exchange of money makes it challenging for the team to pinpoint the mastermind behind the elaborate scheme. Meanwhile, we're introduced to Lim Bok-ja, the mastermind orchestrating these crimes. She receives a call from the writer informing her of the lost money. However, the deluxe taxi team has apprehended him, and with the aid of the phone call, has traced the location of Bok-ja's office. As Goen inquires about their plan this time, Dogi redirects his attention to Jin-Ian, instructing him to hit him just like he'd asked during Young Jin's case. Jin-Ian hesitates, growing increasingly frustrated as Dogi persistently insists on this action. Dogi takes Jin-Ian to a salon and directs the stylist to make Jin-Ian look a decade younger than his actual age. Meanwhile, Kyung-gu's treatment aims to shave off 5 years from his appearance. Subsequently, Goen discovers a job opportunity for students in the vicinity of Bok-ja's office. Jin-Ian, who is set to infiltrate her office as a part-time worker, feels nervous about the task. He waits in a tunnel alongside other job applicants. A bus arrives, and as everyone boards, a person checks their IDs. He questions Jin-Ian's age, suspecting he might not be 20, saying that people in his family age faster. Jin-Ian dodges his incoming questions. The man buys his explanation and allows him in. Meanwhile, Dogi heads to the market to purchase a coat, perhaps gearing up for a different part of the plan. The students arrive at Bok-ja's office, where her associate briefs them on the job. When one student discovers the true nature of the work and refuses, a shocking event unfolds. A member of Bok-ja's team slaps the student hard and issues a chilling threat, leaving everyone stunned. Jin-Ian, witnessing this, humorously finds himself regretting his current situation. The associate then tosses money at the students, demonstrating the lucrative nature of their potential earnings. They are escorted into the workspace and given instructions, memorize their lines and avoid reusing the same phone after receiving payment. Miss Bok-ja is inquiring about the worker who struggles to learn the lines. When the associate points out the boy, Bok-ja orders him to make a coffee if he cannot do his job. The boy starts preparing the coffee, but the kettle's handle is missing. When the boy gives an excuse about the handle, Bok-ja orders her men to chop his hands off. Sacred, the boy grabs the hot kettle, scorching his hands before it crashes to the ground. Before Bok-ja can decide his fate, she has to leave as a rival gang has started a brawl outside her restaurant. Later, we see Dogi dressed like a gambler. He is gambling in Bok-ja's restaurant when he gets into an argument with a worker. Amid the brawl, Bokja arrives and asks what's happening. This is when Dogi reveals that her worker has tried to trick him, and to prove this, he can bet his gold jewelry and a bag full of phones and cash. As he persists in his claims, the worker admits his mistake, after which Miss Bokja fires him from the job. While sitting in the bathroom, Jin talks to Kyung-gu and urges him to involve the police in the case as he is quite scared. However, Kyung-gu advises him to stick to the plan. When Jin keeps begging Kyung-gu, Sung-chul steps into the conversation and advises Jin to keep working until they get the money those people stole. On the other hand, Hannah has arrived at Sung-chul's taxi company and is looking for Dogi. While talking to a worker, she learns that Dogi and 3 other workers are on vacation. On her way out, Hannah sees Kyung-gu, who tries to hide from her. When she asks why Dogi's phone is switched off, Kyung-gu reveals that he is on vacation, that's why. Saying that he has work to do, Kyung-gu leaves the area in a cab, leaving Hannah even more suspicious. Meanwhile, Jin becomes the center of attention for his fast-talking skills, persuading people to pay up quickly. With each call, he tosses the phone aside. However, it's revealed that the person on the other end of every call is Goen. Miss Bokja vents her frustration at her associate for not properly training Jin. It turns out Jin has called 17 people, but the earnings wouldn't even cover the cost of burner phones. Infuriated, she tries to buy more phones but finds they won't be available for a week. In a pinch, another associate of Bokja's suggests a solution, taking phones from Dogi, whom they earlier saw with a bunch of phones. Without wasting time, Bokja approaches Dogi and offers him a free meal. With the help of Goen, Dogi manages to build a connection between himself and Bokja as they talk about their shared hometown and their favorite soup shop there. Bokja gets to the point and tells Dogi to sell her all the phones. Dogi refuses, saying that he has already made a deal with someone. Soon, the man arrives who is supposed to have a meeting with Dogi regarding the phones. He turns out to be a rival of Bokja. A verbal fight erupts between the two enemies, at the end of which the rival gang leader tries to hit Bokja. Dogi stops the man's punch and teaches him a lesson. Because of the man's wrong attitude towards Bokja, Dogi calls off their deal and decides to sell his phones to Bokja. Bokja is left speechless, astonished that someone has taken her side so decisively, an experience she's not used to. Meanwhile, in the bathroom, Jin talks to Goen when Bokja's associate catches him red-handed. Goen rushes to Dogi, urgently pleading with him to save Jin. However, instead of immediate action, Dogi suggests letting them deal with Jin. Simultaneously, Bokja catches Jin and interrogates him about his betrayal. When Jin claims he was talking to himself, Bokja removes the earpiece from his ear, chews it, and then places a knife at his throat, demanding information about his identity. Suddenly, Dogi enters the room with the bag of phones. As the associate tries to cover up the situation, Dogi reveals that he's heard everything. Locking eyes with Jin, he informs Bokja that Jin is actually an undercover police officer who has disrupted his business as well. To lend credibility to his words, Dogi lands a punch right on Jin's face. Meanwhile, Goen contacts Kyung-gu, questioning why he hasn't arrived to help Jin. It's then that Kyung-gu discloses that Hannah is keeping a close watch on him. Goen begins to worry that if they can't intervene, they might lose Jin. Bokja's men remove the black cover from Jin's face. He finds himself in the ocean, and Dogi is there too. While Jin is being sealed in a drum, Dogi tells Bokja how Jin was responsible for a withdrawal in his bank account and the arrest of his colleagues. As Bokja is about to throw the sealed drum into the ocean, Dogi stops her, saying that her beautiful eyes are not worthy of seeing such a brutal scene. Dogi kicks the drum into the water. Kyung-gu rescues Jin, yet Jin feels upset as Dogi has kicked him into the ocean. However, Kyung-gu manages to calm him down, assuring Jin that they'll now promote him for his sacrifice. The next day unfolds with Bokja distributing the phones she acquired from Dogi to her staff. Unbeknownst to them, Goen is prepared as well. As the employees gear up for fraudulent activities, Goen intervenes by hacking into their phone calls. She skillfully cuts the calls before any sensitive account information can be revealed, throwing a wrench into their deceitful plans. Meanwhile, Dogi has lunch with Bokja, who is blushing in Dogi's presence. When he offers her a crab leg, her surprise grows, hinting at budding feelings. Meanwhile, Hannah arrives at the vacation spot where Kyung-gu mentioned Dogi would be, but he's nowhere in sight. To ease Hannah's suspicions, Dogi, Jin, and Goen join Kyung-gu. As Hannah tries to call Dogi, his phone remains switched off. Do-gi strategizes with his team to uncover the truth behind Bok-ja's bank account. He's resolved to wrap up this case by tomorrow. The next day, Do-gi leaves the house carrying a bag, prompting Hana to follow him closely. While Hana persists in her pursuit, Do-gi slips away from her view. While locating Do-gi, Hana arrives at Bok-ja's restaurant. She presents his photo to Bok-ja to ask about his location. However, loyal to Do-gi, Bok-ja refuses to recognize him. Meanwhile, Hana gets a call from Miho, sharing that the blood analysis of the sample found at Young Jin's farmhouse confirms it is Young Jin's blood. On the other hand, Do-gi is busy cooking something up. When Bok-ja approaches him, Do-gi discloses he's leaving today because a prosecutor is hot on his trail. As he says his farewells, his departure hits Bok-ja emotionally. Suddenly, she receives a notification that someone attempted to access her bank account by entering her PIN 5 times. As she rushes to the bank, she unexpectedly encounters Do-gi there. Do-gi explains that he's withdrawing cash to pay for his boat seat. He emphasizes his care for Bok-ja and expresses his joy at seeing her again. His words make Bok-ja blush once more. While at the bank, Do-gi entrusts his bag to Bok-ja as he heads to the bathroom. Taking the bag with her, Bok-ja goes to the counter and changes her account PIN for security. Later, Do-gi invites Bok-ja to accompany him to see him off at the port, promising her a gift in return. Carrying the bag filled with money, Do-gi stows it away in a locker, pretending it's payment for the stowaway broker. Later, at the port, Bok-ja arrives to bid farewell to Do-gi. He presents her with a gift, a video showing him tossing Jin Ian into the ocean. Do-gi explains that this video could be Bok-ja's leverage against officers causing trouble for her business. Impressed by Do-gi's concern for her, Bok-ja is in awe. Do-gi then suggests that they exchange numbers so that they can get in touch with each other. As Do-gi prepares to leave, Bok-ja asks him to visit her whenever he returns to the city. Pretending to feel the pain of leaving Bok-ja behind, Do-gi fakes an emotional departure, heading toward his boat. While Bok-ja sits in her office, feeling downcast due to Do-gi's departure, her workers approach, demanding their payments. As if this weren't frustrating enough, she receives another message from the bank, indicating repeated incorrect PIN attempts. Hurrying to the bank, she discovers that a staggering 3 million won from her account has vanished into thin air. It leaves her balance at zero. Bok-ja is stunned by the sudden turn of events, unable to believe what's happening. Amid this chaos, a call from her associate informs her about the workers demanding their overdue payments. Without saying a word, Bok-ja ends the call. Despite the workers' attempts to contact her, she repeatedly hangs up, seemingly overwhelmed by the mounting problems. Realizing the parallels between her and Do-gi's situations, Bok-ja contacts him, sharing her predicament. Do-gi's advice is clear. She needs to leave the city. Urging Do-gi to turn his boat around, she requests to board with him. They agree that Bok-ja will pay the broker and depart the city on a boat. After withdrawing all her available funds from another account, she places the envelopes in the locker and updates Do-gi. However, Kyung-gu arrives soon after and retrieves the money. As Bok-ja boards the boat, she's taken aback to find her associate and workers there. Their presence shocks her as they are furious, having discovered her lies about lacking sufficient funds to pay them. Amid the chaos of the money dispute, Bok-ja notices Do-gi locking the door. With disappointment, she questions his involvement in this scheme. A flashback unveils the truth. It was Goen who entered the wrong PIN, triggering an automated message to Bok-ja. When Bok-ja visited the bank, she had Do-gi's bag with her. After Do-gi left the bag in the locker, Kyung-gu retrieved it. Unbeknownst to Bok-ja, the bag contained a hidden camera. When Goen inserted the card into her computer, the camera recorded the PIN code being entered. However, despite recovering the PIN, questions arise about Do-gi's actions, particularly why he sought Bok-ja's number. It's revealed that when Goen completed the transaction, a message indicating a zero balance was sent to Bok-ja's phone. Do-gi deleted this message to prevent Bok-ja from seeing it. In a tense exchange, Do-gi admits to orchestrating everything to make Bok-ja feel the pain that her scam victims endured. Unfazed, Bok-ja asserts she has no regrets. Her sole concern is whether anything Do-gi shared with her was genuine. When Do-gi confesses that he deceived her, Bok-ja's world shatters. As Do-gi makes his exit, Bok-ja attempts to call him back, but he doesn't respond or turn back. As the case wraps up, Goen ensures the scammed individuals receive their money back, while Kyung-gu also gets his payment. The next day, Kyung-gu reunites with the elderly woman and returns the money she lost to voice phishing. When Hana visits Bok-ja, she discovers all the voice fishers have vanished. She again connects the dots and realizes a pattern. people mysteriously disappear whenever Dogi and his friends are on vacation. This revelation leads her to suspect that Dogi is behind solving these cases and orchestrating the disappearances of certain individuals. Later that night, as Dogi parks his deluxe taxi at the headquarters, we see Hannah taking a picture of the car. She has finally caught Dogi with the taxi and is now onto him. Later, Dogi has a meeting with Sun Chul. Sun Chul asks him what he did with Bakja and her associates. Dogi reveals that he hasn't transferred them to Miss Beck's prison, and they are still probably roaming in the ocean. He finds the ocean safer than Miss Beck's prison. Opening up to Sun Chul, Dogi shares the heavy burden he's been carrying. He admits feeling guilty about Young Jin's death, confessing that he intended for Young Jin to witness the mine explosion firsthand. However, he now believes that he was too greedy, that he didn't consider the chances of someone else getting hurt. Dogi explains that this incident makes him look back on all of his past actions. With solid evidence pointing to Sun Chul, Hannah decides to search his house. She informs Jin Woo that she has obtained a warrant for him. Seeking his approval for the investigation, Hannah explains that a deluxe taxi is linked to Do Chul's kidnapping and the assault on a police car. She informs Jin Woo that she witnessed the taxi entering Sun Chul's garage yesterday. Now, she aims to search Sun Chul's house to uncover the missing pieces. Jin Woo hesitates to take action against his friend, but he soon acknowledges the gravity of Hannah's investigation. Reluctantly, he grants Hannah permission to search Sun Chul's house, with the condition that if nothing is found, she must follow his instructions. The next day, Jin Woo schedules a lunch meeting with Sun Chul to discuss the situation. He shares details about the criminals disappearing and Dogi being the main suspect. Jin Woo emphasizes his trust in Sun Chul but expresses doubts about Dogi. He informs Sun Chul that Hannah witnessed Dogi's deluxe taxi parked at his place, which led to the decision to obtain a search warrant for his house. Meanwhile, outside Sun Chul's house, the police have arrived, catching the attention of the deluxe team, who spots them through the CCTV cameras. In response, Dogi swiftly exits the basement using a door that opens into Sun Chul's living area. He takes a quick survey to ensure nothing appears suspicious to Hannah. While he returns to the basement, the police climb the house's wall to unlock the door. Soon after, law enforcement enters the house, initiating a search for the deluxe taxi and the missing individuals. Despite inspecting the garage, they find nothing, thanks to Sun Chul's hidden basement. Simultaneously, the team leaves the basement, lingering outside Sun Chul's residence as bystanders. Hannah and Miho once again come up empty-handed. The fingerprints collected by the forensic team from Sun Chul's house predominantly match Sun Chul's. It disappoints Hannah as they fail to uncover any traces of the missing people. The deluxe team gathers for a meeting where Sun Chul discloses Hannah's investigation against them. At that moment, Dogi receives a call from Hannah inviting him to a meeting. During their confrontation, Hannah questions Dogi about why he's involved in abducting criminals. She asserts that he's no different from the very criminals he despises. In response, Dogi challenges her, asking why she hasn't arrested him if he's a criminal. Despite having a prime suspect in clear circumstances, he understands that she can't apprehend him without evidence. Hannah counters, expressing her reluctance to wrongly accuse anyone, even if it means letting go of 100 criminals. Dogi's question is what will happen to those who got hurt by those 100 criminals. They even had the authority to make Do Chul pay for his crimes, but he was only sentenced to 10 years, which he didn't even fully serve. His sentence was reduced for being his temporary insanity and for showing regret. But Dogi believes that his victims don't care about any of that. They can no longer go on living as before. Hannah probes further, suggesting that Dogi's actions might stem from his inability to bring his mother's murderer to justice. She speculates that Dogi might be channeling his anger toward other criminals as a result. Following the unsuccessful search on Sun Chul's property, Hannah apologizes to Jin Woo. During their discussion, Jin Woo directs Hannah to close the case involving Woolgok Dong, an individual presumed dead but whose body hasn't been found yet. As they talk, Sun Chul unexpectedly arrives at the office. Jin Woo extends an apology to him for doubting him and searching his property. He assigns Sun Chul a new case for his Blue Bird Foundation, which is dedicated to aiding victims. Sun Chul promptly heads to meet the victim's father, Pastor Ko. While contributing funds, he discreetly hands them a deluxe taxi service envelope for retribution. Meanwhile, Hannah, who is also investigating the case, pays a visit to the church. As the victim's sister engages with Hannah, we catch a glimpse of Pastor Ko riding in the deluxe taxi with Dogi. Curious about their destination, Pastor Ko questions Dogi, who reveals they are going to seek revenge. Seizing the moment, Do-gi activates the recorder, prompting Pastor Ko to share his account of the incident. The elderly man recounts the tale of his son, Dong-hee. He was a genuinely kind individual who found a similar soul in Hae-yeon. Their blissful life revolved around Dong-hee's construction work, with Hae-yeon's influential connections aiding him. However, Dong-hee vanished after a meeting with Hae-yeon's friend, Young-tae. Convinced that Young-tae is responsible for his son's disappearance, Pastor Ko presents a photo of Young-tae to Do-gi. He immediately identifies the man. A flashback reveals that Young-tae pretended to be friendly with Dong-hee, ultimately rendering him unconscious with spiked drinks. After reviewing CCTV footage, the police confirmed that Young-tae took Dong-hee to his office. A witness named Woo Seob stated that they had a quarrel, after which he and Young-tae left the building. Upon their return the next day, Dong-hee was nowhere to be found. Despite an extensive search of nearby CCTV recordings, none revealed Dong-hee leaving the location. According to Pastor Ko, Dong-hee never left, and only Young-tae holds the answers to the mysterious events within. In a conversation with Hannah and Miho, Dong-hee's sister discloses Young-tae's motive, jealousy. Apparently, he harbored feelings for Hae-yeon, and in a fit of envy, he targeted her brother. The girl is convinced of her brother's demise, and now her sole desire is to see the person accountable locked up. Hannah says that she can't do anything without the body. The girl pleads with her, imploring her assistance in ensuring Young-tae faces the consequences of his crime. She desperately seeks justice for her family. Meanwhile, Do-gi hands the game instructions to Pastor Ko and escorts him to the gaming station. Engaging in the game, Pastor Ko receives guidance from a fairy explaining the rules. Unexpectedly, he opts not to pursue revenge, holding onto the belief that his son is still alive. He questions the need for revenge. He remains hopeful about Dong-hee's return. During the meeting, Sung-chul decides against taking the case since Pastor Ko has declined their assistance. However, the Blue Bird Foundation will remain committed to helping them. As Sung-chul hands Pastor Ko's tape to Do-gi, Do-gi shows him the picture of the prime suspect, Young-tae. He remarkably resembles Miss Beck's right-hand person. Intriguingly, Do-gi queries Sung-chul about his course of action if someone seeks revenge on Miss Beck. On the other hand, Young-tae is released from jail due to the lack of evidence. Woo Seob picks him up. On their way to their hideout, Woo Seob keeps getting calls from Hannah, but he doesn't pick it up. When he casually comments on Young-tae's misfortune with women like Hannah and Hae-yeon, Young-tae shoots him a disapproving look, seemingly unimpressed by the remark. Meanwhile, Sung-chul directs Do-gi to transport him to Miss Beck's residence, aiming to discuss Dong-hee's case with her. As Sung-chul proceeds to Miss Beck's office, Do-gi observes the arrival of 3 black cars. Young-tae steps out, and his associates bring out an injured Woo Seob. Inside the building, Young-tae asserts his dominance, making it clear that Woo Seob is merely his pawn. Woo Seob must be careful in their conversations, or he could easily make him disappear. As Do-gi is peering into the building, he is startled when someone places a hand on his shoulder. It turns out to be Miss Beck's right-hand man, Suk-tae, revealing that the person inside is his twin brother. In a meeting with Miss Beck, Sung-chul discloses the involvement of one of his men in a murder. Miss Beck appears somewhat concerned. When Young-tae and Suk-tae enter the room, Sung-chul is taken aback by their presence. Young-tae begins apologizing to Miss Beck for not informing her about the case earlier. However, he still portrays himself as innocent. Miss Beck starts slapping Suk-tae for not informing her about the case. She is infuriated because she is learning from a third party about her man. As Sung-chul is about to leave, Miss Beck advises him to stay in his lane as he always did. On their way out, Sung-chul and Do-gi discuss that Miss Beck didn't tell them what she did to Do-chul's body. Sung-chul says that he overlooked Do-chul's case, but now, in Dong-hee's case, he can't let that slide and let Miss Beck do whatever she likes. Do-gi is ready to discover what Miss Beck and her man are up to. Meanwhile, Woo Seob is once again drunk. When he tries to get into the car, his driver tries to stop him. However, he still gets in the car and drives away. His intoxicated state leads to his detention for drunk driving. Hannah, who had been attempting to reach him, finally gets the chance to interrogate him. She inquires about the events of that fateful night. Woo Seob maintains his earlier stance, claiming he didn't witness anything. He sticks to the story of leaving the office with Young-tae while Dong-hee was still inside. Fearful of imprisonment, he pleads with Hannah. Hannah proposes a deal to Woo Seob. She'll release him if he assists in gathering information from Young-tae regarding Dong-hee. Reflecting on the suffering caused by Young-tae, Woo Seob opts to collaborate with Hannah. That night, while having drinks with Young-tae, Woo Seob cannot hold back. He needs to know what Young Tae did to Dong-hee, so he tries to get info out of him, making it seem like he wants to learn how to make someone vanish, just like Young Tae did. Falling for the act, Young Tae spills everything to Woo Seob in his ear. Later, as the drinks take their toll and Young Tae dozes off, Woo Seob slips out and dials Hannah's number, but before he can say a word, Suk Tae's sudden appearance shocks him. Trying to flee, he dashes up the stairs, only to find Young Tae waiting at the other end. He'd only pretended to be asleep. In a desperate attempt to escape, Woo Seob leaps out the window, only to find the twins in hot pursuit. Meanwhile, Hannah, realizing the danger, leaves her office. She urgently calls Miho. Disclosing Woo Seob's location, Miho assures her he will rush there to save their informant. As Woo Seob tries to flee, Suk Tae grabs and slams him against a wall. As things seem dire, Dogi suddenly appears, knocking Suk Tae down. He urges Woo Seob to run away while a scuffle breaks out between Suk Tae and him. They wrestle, each trying to gain the upper hand. Seizing Dogi, Suk Tae manages to bring him down before the sound of approaching police sirens interrupts their fight. They both bolt before getting caught. Meanwhile, Young Tae captures Woo Seob. Armed with a hockey stick, Young Tae injures Woo Seob's foot, leaving him crawling for safety. Desperate, Woo Seob seeks refuge in a warehouse, pursued by Young Tae. Just when he thinks he's evaded danger, Young Tae emerges beside him, striking him repeatedly while Woo Seob struggles to crawl away. The police have assembled. Officer Dong Pil, who handled Dong-hee's case, tells Hannah that a body has been discovered, but they haven't identified it yet. Hannah is escorted to the body, and when the bag is unzipped, she's deeply shocked. It's Miho. Overwhelmed by the loss, Hannah grieves while the officer learns from medics that Miho was already deceased when they found him in the warehouse. Among the spectators stands Dogi, and a flashback reveals the truth. When Young Tae targeted Woo Seob, Miho intervened. A scuffle broke out, and Miho gained the upper hand in the fight against Young Tae. But Suk Tae intervened, stabbing Miho multiple times, ending his life abruptly. With Miho gone, they took Woo Seob with them. Back in the present, Hannah confronts Young Tae at his place, pouring out her fury over Miho's death. Young Tae, chillingly composed, laughs as Hannah's emotions flare. The cops step in, controlling Hannah, and arrest Young Tae. In the interrogation room, Hannah confronts Young Tae about Woo Seob. Young Tae brazenly confesses to the killing, taunting her that without evidence, she can't touch him. Enraged, Hannah lashes out, using a laptop to strike him. As she attempts to attack him again with a chair, Jin Woo intervenes, stopping him. Young Tae plays the victim, questioning how a prosecutor can assault without evidence. Jin Woo steps in, advising Hannah to take a break. He's decided to pass the case to another prosecutor and has released Young Tae due to insufficient evidence. Hannah's frustration mounts, pointing out the clear motive and circumstances surrounding the case. She can't believe Young Tae is walking free due to a lack of proof. Jin Woo assures her they'll capture Miho's killer, even if it means involving the entire office. He urges her to take a step back and rest, but Hannah can't contain her emotions. The idea of resting while her colleague's murder remains unresolved becomes unbearable for her. The following day, Miho's funeral takes place, where his family cries over their biggest loss. Hannah approaches Miho's mother and apologizes, saying that this is all her fault. His mother responds that Miho died doing a good deed, so he will meet much better parents in his next life and live comfortably. All she wants now is for Hannah to catch the killer. As she begs Hannah to avenge Miho, Hannah feels helpless. Despite knowing who the killer is, she can't do anything due to lack of evidence. This reality shatters her into pieces, and she can do nothing but cry. While at the funeral, she meets Dogi and realizes he was right all this time about taking revenge on the bad people who managed to get away from punishment. She urges Dogi to help her avenge Miho. Like other victims, Dogi takes Hannah in his deluxe taxi and turns on the recorder to record the story. Hannah begins telling how Woo Seob agreed to be their informant and how Young Tae attacked him. She also reveals to Dogi that Miho died while protecting Woo Seob. As she talks about her colleague, her eyes fill with tears. Dogi drops her off at the game station, where she turns on the screen to play the game. The game's fairy gives her the instructions and then asks if she wants to take revenge. Hannah selects to take revenge, allowing the deluxe team to initiate their mission. As the team gathers in the basement, Dogi discusses with them the details. The main suspect is Young Tae, who is behind the kidnapping of Woo Seob, the murder of Miho, and the disappearance of Dong-hee. Jin Ian is stunned to see how evil Young Tae is. After discussing the details, Sung Chul decides to take the case. Everybody else also agrees with his decision. Their mission takes them to Young Tae's office, where they aim to uncover more about him. Jin Ian and Kyung-gu visit a shop under Young Tae's office, pretending to buy some scuba diving clothes. There, they notice mold on the ceiling. When asked, the shopkeeper discloses an abnormal amount of water dripping from above, more than usual. Meanwhile, Do-gi pretends to be a police officer and tries to gather information from a restaurant opposite to Young Tae's office. The owner of the restaurant reveals that there was always steam coming out of Young Tae's office as if they were trying to cool down a hot machinery. Later, the team visits the trash area of the building and finds a half-molten bottle with a liquid other than water inside. Cohen suspects that maybe it is a liquid that can get rid of the body but requires a lot of water. Kyung-gu immediately recognizes that sulfuric acid is the liquid that evaporates water. It means if Young Tae got rid of their body with sulfuric acid and cleaned up the scene with water, that would explain the steam coming out of his office. Do-gi thinks that one cannot get sulfuric acid that easily, especially when it is strong enough to melt a body. In order to dig deep into their hypothesis, Do-gi calls Hannah and informs her about the situation. When Do-gi tells her about sulfuric acid, Hannah immediately realizes that Woo Seob's company uses sulfuric acid to make dehumidifiers. As they delve deeper into this case, they soon realize that Young Tae made this paper company only to get sulfuric acid, which only points to one thing: serial killing. With the truth revealed, Goen calls Namsan Industries that delivers sulfuric acid to Woo Seob's company. She has called the company to delay today's delivery by an hour. The manager falls for it and delays the delivery. Jin Ian and Kyung-gu then imitate the delivery boys and deliver the drums of sulfuric acid to Young Tae. They help transfer the drums, and with that, their task is completed. As they call Do-gi, it is revealed that they had planted a tracker on the drums, and now Do-gi is on his way to the place where Young Tae will probably carry out his heinous act of melting bodies. In a sudden and swift move, Do-gi emerges, catching Young Tae's men off guard with a flying kick. Swiftly moving inside the building, he subdues another individual before navigating through the premises. Amidst the search, he stumbles upon a collection of tools in a chilling site, a freezing compartment with Woo Seob's lifeless body, marked with disturbing wounds. The sight triggers a haunting flood of memories for Do-gi, reminding him of his mother's tragic fate. Overwhelmed by these bitter recollections, he finds himself suffocating, gasping for air as the memories threaten to overpower him. Desperate for stability, he retreats from the scene, using a paper bag to regain control and steady his breathing. He then informs the other team members that Young Tae first extracts the organs of people and then gets rid of their bodies using sulfuric acid. This is when the team finally unravels the truth behind Young Tae's business. It is an organ trafficking ring, and this building is their secret place of operation. Regaining composure, Do-gi re-enters the building just as doctors prepare to operate on another victim. Before he can intervene, Young Tae launches a sudden assault, knocking Do-gi to the ground and violently hurling him against the wall. Amidst their brawl, the doctor attempts to flee, but Jin Ian and Kyung-gu swiftly incapacitate him and render him unconscious. Meanwhile, Young Tae, armed with a knife, relentlessly attacks Do-gi. Dodging the strikes, Do-gi counters, managing to wound Young Tae in the leg. In a desperate move, as he feels overpowered, Young Tae resorts to a chilling tactic. He stabs the helpless victim to divert Do-gi's attention. Torn between aiding the bleeding victim and subduing Young Tae, Do-gi tries to stem the victim's bleeding. In the chaos, Young Tae seizes the opportunity to flee. With no one available to catch him, he escapes from the area. Meanwhile, Do-gi calls Hannah and instructs her to send an ambulance to the given location. Soon, Hannah and the police arrive at Young Tae's operation building and find Woo Seob's body inside the freezing chamber. Soon, the place is swarmed by the press as they ask Hannah and the police about the details of this organ trafficking ring. Sung Chul shows Miss Beck the news and asks if she knows about it. Miss Beck blatantly reveals that she is the one who started the organ trafficking business. She continues by saying that she sold the eyes and cornea of all the dirtbags Sung Chul brought in. Sung Chul is shocked to hear this as he always made sure those criminals could still live. Miss Beck responds that she only killed Du Chul because she had no choice. She says that she never hurt any innocent civilians. It is shocking for her too, that Young Tae was running this side hustle. According to her, only Suk Tae knew about their business, which means he and Young Tae were working together and deceiving her. She now realizes that the two conspired against her. Giving Sung Chul the keys to their private prison, Miss Beck gives him the responsibility to keep an eye on it until she finds someone else. She plans to drug Suk Tae with the sleeping pills and hand him over to Sung Chul. so he can teach him a lesson for his crimes. Later that night, Do-gi arrives at Sung Chul's house and engages in a conversation with him regarding Suk-tae and Young-tae's fate. Do-gi believes they should catch them and hand them to the prosecution. Sung Chul fears that the police might discover about their private prison. Do-gi believes that if they lock Young-tae up in their prison, it will feel like a home to him, so they must teach him a lesson. When Sung Chul hesitates, Do-gi once again asks Sung Chul if his methods are right, as it was his wrong decision that he trusted Miss Beck with all the criminals. The following day, Miss Beck arrives at a restaurant to meet Suk-tae. She waves at Sung Chul, who is waiting outside the restaurant with Do-gi. Go-eun is keeping an eye on the footage from the hidden camera installed in a bouquet. Soon, Suk-tae arrives at the location. Sung Chul tells Do-gi to storm into the building once Miss Beck drugs Suk-tae. Do-gi asks if they can trust Miss Beck, to which Sung Chul says that Miss Beck solely works on trust and that she will gain nothing from choosing Suk-tae in this situation. Meanwhile, Jin Ian and Kyung-gu arrive at the private prison to keep an eye on the criminals. After giving Suk-tae a lecture about loyalty and deceit, Miss Beck gives him the drug tea. After Suk-tae drinks it, she reveals to him that she has not forgiven him for his actions, saying that he has to pay for his crimes. Miss Beck waits for him to lose consciousness. However, to her shock, Suk-tae stays awake. Realizing her plan isn't working, she tries to run away, but Suk-tae catches her from the hair. Amid the confrontation, the bouquet falls, knocking down the camera. Do-gi rushes inside the restaurant only to find out that the table is empty and the flower is in its place. As Go-eun checks the video, she realizes that the video was recorded. It was all a trap to lure the team here so they could do their work at the prison. As Do-gi and Sung Chul return to the prison, they are shocked to see that all the cages are empty. One is locked, and Kyung-gu and injured Jin Ian are inside it. Sung Chul calls Miss Beck for answers. She reveals that she is not doing this to save her man. It turns out that she is the one who planned this entire organ trafficking business, including harming innocent civilians. Go-eun and Do-gi rescue Kyung-gu and Jin Ian and take them to the hospital. A flashback shows that Suk-tae attacked the duo and kidnapped all the prisoners. Go-eun is now trying her best to track down the bus in which they have left. She is determined to catch them as her sister's criminal is also there. Soon, Go-eun finds Young-tae and learns that he is on his way to the Bahamian embassy. The team speculates that Miss Beck might plan to hide Young-tae and the prisoners in an extraterritorial jurisdiction. Not even the police can enter that place, but Do-gi and his team can. Soon, the team arrives at the embassy, where they mess with the electric room, causing a power outage. The distraction allows Do-gi to access the restricted area. Meanwhile, Hannah arrives at the embassy and talks to Ambassador Jack Johnson about Miss Beck. She introduces herself as a prosecutor and asks Ambassador Jack if he and Miss Beck are close. Ambassador Jack hesitates and leaves the scene, saying he has a meeting to attend. Later, he calls Miss Beck and rebukes him for spreading the news that she and him are close, saying that his wife will kill them. He gets infuriated and orders Miss Beck to pack her stuff and leave the embassy. Worried, Miss Beck orders Suk-tae to prepare the car to leave for the embassy. Meanwhile, Do-gi uses smoke bombs in the embassy to get people to leave. The smoke quickly fills the building, and everyone rushes out. In the chaos, Do-gi spots Young-tae attempting to escape. He catches up and starts a fight by throwing a wrench at him. This time, Do-gi seems to have the upper hand, knocking Young-tae down and using a glass to attack him before hitting him with the wrench. Once Young-tae is down, Kyung-gu and Do-gi load him into an ambulance and drive away. Hannah, spotting Do-gi, starts following him, while Miss Beck, near the embassy, also sees him. Do-gi takes advantage of the ambulance to navigate through traffic, leaving Miss Beck and Hannah behind. Later, Miss Beck calls Sung Chul and orders him to return her Young-tae. Sung Chul responds that if she wants him back, she has to trade him with all the prisoners. It is decided that tomorrow, they both meet at the bridge and carry out the exchange. On the other hand, we see Manager Lee freeing himself and Ju Chan. They incapacitate Miss Beck's men and manage to kick them out of the bus. Some of the prisoners escape, while others stay behind to take revenge on Do-gi. Among them is Ju Chan, who is determined to kill Do-gi as early as possible. Meanwhile, Manager Lee attends a call on a phone belonging to someone from Miss Beck's camp, allowing Suk-tae to learn that the prisoners have escaped. Miss Beck speaks to Manager Lee and assures him that she is their ally, and that Do-gi of a deluxe taxi is the one who locked them up. She instructs Lee to approach her once he clarifies who his actual enemy is. Frustrated, Miss Beck vents by hurling a glass against the wall before ordering Suk-tae to monitor the Rainbow Taxi building and apprehend all the escapees if they show up there. On the other hand, Hannah arrives at the taxi stand and calls Do-gi for a talk. Meanwhile, we see Young-eun's boyfriend, Choi-min, keeping an eye on Do-gi to confirm that what Miss Beck said was true. Hannah orders Do-gi to give her Young-tae, but Do-gi refuses, saying that he has some work and will give him once their work is done. However, Hannah isn't open to negotiation. She expresses that she doesn't want to take revenge anymore. When Do-gi stands firm against her request, Hannah asserts that she'll locate Young-tae no matter where Do-gi hides him. Elsewhere, the social worker Jung-suk is consuming someone else's food near a convenience store. Her confinement has deeply impacted her memory, leaving her unable to recall her experiences. Suddenly, fragments of Sung-chul's kidnapping flood back into her mind. Meanwhile, Choi-min returns from Rainbow Taxi Service and informs Ju-chan and manager Lee about spotting Do-gi there. Before they can delve into discussions, they're surrounded by Miss Beck's men, who had been tailing Choi-min from the taxi stand. As the men escort the prisoners away, Jung-suk tries to intervene. She attempts to stop a passing police car and directs the officer to drive. Meanwhile, Ju-chan, Lee and Choi-min are taken to Miss Beck, who gives them two choices: either turn themselves in or seek revenge. Later that night, Sung-chul and his team arrive at the bridge where Miss Beck is waiting for him. To ensure Sung-chul is telling the truth, Miss Beck uses binoculars to search for Young-tae in his car. Sung-chul does the same and sees a van full of men but not the criminals. Then, the actual bus carrying the prisoners appears from behind. Seeing the trio, Sung-chul signals Do-gi, who gets out of the car to facilitate the exchange. However, the police arrive in time, causing Miss Beck and his men to escape. Hannah comes up to Do-gi and instructs him to give Young-tae to her. Officer Dong-pil then arrests Do-gi for hiding a criminal. Returning to the police station, Hannah asks Dong-pil if he was tailing her. A flashback shows that Dong-pil had sent her man after Hannah when she was meeting Do-gi. When Do-gi left the area with Young-tae, the informant told Dong-pil. He then told Hannah that Young-tae was found but didn't mention whom he was with. Hannah tells Officer Dong-pil that Do-gi isn't an accomplice but an informant. However, Dong-pil still finds it suspicious that Do-gi knew Young-tae's whereabouts. Amid their conversation, Jin-woo approaches and orders Hannah to investigate Do-gi properly. As this is not the first time he acted suspiciously, Do-gi is taken for interrogation, where Dong-pil asks him why he was with Young-tae. Instead of answering questions, Do-gi responds that he feels hungry. On the other hand, Maria is working in the factory with other co-workers when she witnesses Jong-gun hiding behind the water tank. Worried, she calls Goen and asks if Jong-gun's punishment is over, as she has seen him in the factory. Suspecting that Jong-gun has returned, Goen decides to go to the factory to ensure Maria's safety. She informs the team about it and then makes her way to the factory on her bike. Choi-min, who is still watching the team, sees Goen leaving Sung-chul's place. Meanwhile, as Maria leaves the factory, Jong-gun gets in her way. It seems like he genuinely likes Maria and cares for her. He tells Maria that he misses her and thinks about her every night. As he proceeds to hug her, Goen arrives on her bike just in time. As Jong-gun falls on the road, Goen instructs Maria to hop on the motorcycle. However, before she can ride away, someone on a motorbike hits her in the head, knocking her and Maria unconscious. Jong-gun immediately runs towards Maria to ensure that she is okay. The bike rider turns out to be Choi-min, the man Goen despises the most. Meanwhile, Jin-ian tries to reach out to Goen, but she isn't answering. As he is busy, he can't see the CCTV cameras showing that Miss Beck has arrived at Sung-chul's house with her man. She enters the house and tells Sung-chul she is here for revenge. She believes that Sung-chul was the one who called the police that night and betrayed her. Unaware of what's happening outside, Jin-ian leaves the basement only to see Kyung-gu and Sung-chul held captive. Kyung-gu orders him to run away. Acting swiftly, Jin-ian returns to the basement and gets in the deluxe taxi, leaving Miss Beck's men behind. He manages to escape. The headquarters of the deluxe taxi is exposed to Miss Beck. She threatens Sung-chul, saying that whatever she will do from now on will be his fault as he is the one who tipped the prosecutor. On the other hand, Do-gi receives food at the police station. As he opens the lid, he sees a note from Miss Beck. She has said that if Do-gi wants to save his team, he should leave the police station. Desperate to save his team's life, Do-gi makes an excuse to use the bathroom. As the officer on duty approaches him, he knocks him to the ground. Before Do-gi can knock him unconscious, Hannah enters the room. She stops Do-gi from hunting the police officer as he can end up in jail. After sending the officer out of the room, she tries talking to Do-gi, but he isn't ready to listen. When Hannah asks what's happening, Dogi asks her if she wants to catch the person who was behind the organ trafficking ring. Hannah thinks about it, and the next thing we know, Dawn Pill rushes to the interrogation room only to find Hannah there with Dogi's handcuffs. When he asks Hannah why he let Dogi go, Hannah reveals that she has learned about Young Tae's accomplice. A flashback shows Hannah interrogating Young Tae when he confessed that he didn't kill Woo Seob and Miho. Though he accepts stabbing Woo Seob, he makes it clear that it was his brother Suk Tae who ended their lives. Young Tae's confession allowed Hannah to let Dogi go. Meanwhile, we see Dogi outside the police station, trying to connect to his teammates. Soon after, Jin arrives in the taxi and the two escape from the place. This is when Dogi learns that Miss Beck raided the house and that Kyung-gu and Sung Chul are being held hostage. He also learns that they can't reach Goen, who went to take care of Maria. Just then, Dogi receives a call from Miss Beck, who orders him to come to his hideout if he wants to save his colleagues. Dogi follows the instructions, and the deluxe taxi arrives at the basement soon after. Manager Lee and Miss Beck's man are ready to end Dogi then and there. However, as they draw near the car, they are shocked to see that it is Jin who is inside the vehicle, not Dogi. Dogi then appears from behind. Wearing the night vision glasses, he uses a wrench to destroy the power sockets. It causes a power outage, allowing him to use his night vision goggles to find and incapacitate each goon. In seconds, he gets rid of every gang member there. Then he flashes the light at Manager Lee, inquiring about Sung Chul's whereabouts. Lee responds that he doesn't know anything. When Dogi tortures him, he reveals that Kyung-gu and Sung Chul are at Miss Beck's prison while Goen is with Choi Min. Just then, Dogi receives a video call from Miss Beck. One of her men crushes Kyung-gu's finger with a hammer. Miss Beck then warns Dogi that if he doesn't get to her hideout, she will chop Kyung-gu's finger off every 5 minutes. After the call ends, Dogi shifts his focus to Lee to extract information about Goen's whereabouts. Scared of getting killed by Dogi, Lee reveals that Choi Min has taken Goen to his warehouse, where he shoots videos. Hearing this, Dogi gets worried as Choi Min will do the same to Goen that he did to his sister. Jin instructs Dogi to save Goen while he will go to Miss Beck's office. He feels embarrassed that he fled for his life when Kyung-gu and Sung Chul were held captive. Now, he wants to make up for that. As Jin leaves the basement, Ju-chan calls Suk Tae, thinking the man in the car is Dogi. Suk Tae orders Ju-chan to kill Dogi if he wants. Later, we see Dogi getting out of the basement in another taxi. He is on his way to the warehouse, where Choi Min is ready to make videos of Maria and Goen. As Goen regains consciousness, Choi Min begins getting close to her. As Dogi hasn't arrived yet, Miss Beck decides to crush another one of Kyung-gu's fingers. As she raises the hammer, Sung Chul stops her. He urges her not to hurt Kyung-gu but him. Beck, however, has different plans for Sung Chul. In exchange for Kyung-gu's safety, she demands Sung Chul's eyes. Reluctantly, Sung Chul agrees. Suk Tae arrives with a briefcase containing injections. Beck seizes a syringe, warning Sung Chul that his eye will cloud over once injected. She proceeds, and Sung Chul experiences the truth of her words as the syringe enters his eye, blurring his vision. Soon, the police and Hannah arrive outside Beck's office. It turns out that Hannah informed Jin Woo about Sung Chul's abduction. Jin Woo tried to call Sung Chul, and when he didn't pick up, realized the gravity of the situation. Hannah then decided that she will arrest Suk Tae without a warrant and conduct a search on Beck's company. Jin Woo authorizes her actions, considering the lives at stake. Back to the present day, Hannah asks Beck where Suk Tae is. When Beck asks what they want for him, Hannah reveals that they are here to arrest Suk Tae for the murder of Woo Seob and Miho. Just then, Jin arrives and, seeing Hannah there, leaves the area thinking that Kyung-gu and Sung Chul will be rescued. On the other hand, Goen is still held captive by Choi Min. Though Jang-gun has feelings for Maria, he doesn't seem to understand what is right and wrong. All he wants is to be with Maria, even if it means hurting her or doing anything against her will. Seeing Jang-gun drawing near Maria, Goen kicks him, allowing Maria to escape. After sending Maria out, Goen shuts the door in order to stop the men from chasing her. Choi Min grabs her from the hair and drags her away from the door. While he takes her inside, Jang-gun chases Maria and manages to catch her. However, before he can do anything, Dogi arrives just in time. Wearing brass knuckles, he prepares to stop Jang-gun, who soon realizes his time is over. On the other hand, Choi Min throws Goen to the bed and tells her that he will record her video and upload it just like he did with Yoon-eun. Goen gets infuriated, spitting at Choi Min for taking out her sister's name from his mouth. Choi Min then shows her the video of Young-eun that is still on his phone despite Goen's attempt to delete it from the server. As Choi Min attempts to assault her, Do-gi's car crashes into the warehouse. As Do-gi gets out to rescue Goen, Choi Min attacks him with a knife. Dodging skillfully, Do-gi counters and subdues Choi Min, beating him. Seizing Choi Min, Do-gi unleashes a series of blows. He uses a nail gun to target Choi Min's lower body, followed by forceful punches with the brass knuckles. Consumed by rage, Do-gi's relentless assault prompts Goen to intervene, preventing him from delivering a fatal blow. Do-gi then grabs Choi Min's phone, allowing Goen to destroy it along with the last video of her sister. As Goen gets emotional thinking about her sister, Do-gi comforts her with a warm hug. Do-gi then ties the criminals up and calls the cops. The trio urges for mercy, saying they will never do anything wrong again. However, Do-gi responds that if he didn't hand them over to the cops, he might kill them. Having made his point, Do-gi and Goen exit the scene. Shortly after that, the police arrive, taking the abductors into custody. Maria is safely rescued, and the criminals are destined to spend most of their lives behind bars. Meanwhile, the police search Baek's property to find Kyung-gu and Sung-chul. However, they couldn't find anything. Do-gi and Goen get in touch with Jin-eun, who takes a breath of relief hearing that Goen is alright. As the duo step out of their vehicles, they witness Jin-eun coming towards them. Tragedy strikes as Jin-eun's car gets hit by a truck. The driver doesn't stop there. Deliberately, he rams the truck into Jin-eun's car again, ensuring a fatal outcome. Do-gi and Goen runs towards Jin-eun to save him. Meanwhile, the truck driver turns out to be Ju-chan, who crashed into Jin-eun's car, thinking of him as Do-gi. As he checks inside the car, he is shocked to see that it is not Do-gi but Jin-eun who is injured. Do-gi arrives and begins hitting Ju-chan in the face, incapacitating him. As Do-gi is busy waking Jin-eun up, Ju-chan stabs him in the shoulder, but Goen manages to knock him down with her helmet. Knowing that he can't harm Do-gi, Ju-chan escapes from the place in his truck. Jin-eun wakes up and urges Do-gi to rescue Kyung-gu and Sung-chul. He then apologizes to Do-gi and Goen for asking them things to do, and with that said, he loses consciousness. Do-gi's eyes fill with tears as he can't bear the pain of losing another one of his family. Collecting himself, he disinfects the stab wound and hastily staples it shut. Setting off in his taxi, now reinforced with the metal structure, he soon locates Ju-chan. A fierce clash erupts between them as they relentlessly ram their cars into each other. Reacting swiftly, Do-gi attempts to halt the truck using his vehicle. Accelerating and executing a sharp U-turn, he races his car at full speed toward the truck. As the car hurtles towards the truck, Do-gi leaps onto the road. His vehicle collides head-on with the car, launching it into the air before it crashes back down onto the road. Ju-chan sustains fatal injuries in the cataclysmic collision. As Goen arrives, Do-gi advises her to stay with Jin-eun while he heads to Baek's office to save Kyung-gu and Sung-chul, leaving Goen behind. He then rides away on the bike. While still in Baek's captivity, Sung-chul shows his regret for working with a monster like her. Saying that she liked him, Baek offers him a second chance. Sung-chul can catch and lock up the bad guys while she sells their organs. According to her, if Sung-chul can permit just one monster, he can get rid of all the monsters. As Baek extends a friendship hand to Sung-chul, Sung-chul pulls his hand away from the cage, forcefully hitting hers aside. He says he can never be tempted by her ridiculous offer. He further explains to her that he and his team have lost families to crimes, which means they must live the rest of their lives trapped inside the flames of rage. With that relentless fire burning within, they can never align themselves with those responsible for such heinous deeds. Goen remains at the hospital with Jin-eun while Do-gi storms into Baek's hideout, swiftly incapacitating her men. Clearing out the office, he advances toward the private jail, only to confront another group of assailants. He relentlessly fights off each attacker, landing punches until none stand in his way. However, his progress halts as Baek's men hold knives at Kyung-gu and Sung-chul's throats. Baek demands Do-gi's surrender, threatening the lives of his friends. Reluctantly, Do-gi abandons his weapons, prompting Baek's men to attack him from behind, forcing him to his knees. Suk-tae relentlessly strikes Do-gi's face until he collapses into a semi-conscious state on the ground. As Baek comes near her, Do-gi seizes her leg, swiftly rising to his feet. Seizing her knife, he manages to hold Baek at knife point. He not only threatens her henchman but also proves his resolve by slicing a gash across Baek's face. Realizing Do-gi is not playing, Baek orders her men to let Sung Chul and Kyung-gu go. As the two manage to flee, an assailant strikes Do-gi from behind, providing an opportunity for Baek to make her escape from the prison. Left to face the horde of goons alone, Do-gi confronts them head-on. Meanwhile, Baek swiftly boards a truck, intending to flee. Do-gi catches up, striking Suk-tae in an attempt to extract Baek from the vehicle. Despite his efforts, Suk-tae intervenes, stopping Do-gi and allowing Baek to escape. A fierce battle ensues between Suk-tae and Do-gi. Although Do-gi tries to fight back, Suk-tae targets Do-gi's previously injured shoulder, gaining the upper hand in their fight. Soon, Do-gi is surrounded by Baek's men, making it impossible for him to outnumber them. However, Hana and Officer Dong-pil arrive just in time, shooting in the air. Holding a gun, Hana commands Baek's men, including Suk-tae, to surrender. The arrival of police cars strengthens their position, compelling Suk-tae to yield. Dong-pil attempts to calm Hana, who remains tense with her pistol aimed at Suk-tae. Amid the commotion, Do-gi seizes the opportunity to escape in a police car, leaving a concerned Hana behind. Remarkably, Do-gi has a way to track Baek's movements. During his attempt to extract her from the truck, he strategically tossed his earpiece inside. This clever move now enables him not only to locate Baek but also to eavesdrop on her plans. All he hears about is Baek cursing him for ruining his face and his plans. Soon, Baek arrives at the port from where she will leave the city. However, she is shocked that Do-gi has followed her here. A brawl ensues between Do-gi and Baek's men, with Do-gi utilizing the police car and crashing it into the assailants. While the goons surround Do-gi, Baek seizes the opportunity to make her escape. Once Do-gi deals with the men, he exits the car, embarking on a pursuit of Baek. Soon, he overpowers the two guards shielding her, leaving her defenseless. Baek confronts Do-gi and challenges him to end her life. It was all just a game to her, and she brandishes a knife to attack Do-gi. Swiftly, Do-gi intervenes, stopping her assault and inflicting pain by twisting her hand. Hana, who was tailing Do-gi, arrives at the scene. Do-gi tells Baek that she will now have to pay for her sins for the rest of her life. Baek laughs at him, saying she has leverage over a slew of political and financial big shots that she can get out of prison in no time. However, Hana interjects, declaring that anyone attempting to aid Baek will face legal consequences. Ultimately, Baek is arrested for orchestrating an organ trafficking ring that resulted in the deaths of numerous innocent individuals. Addressing Do-gi, Hana inquires if he turned Baek over because he now trusts the law. Do-gi's response is clear. He doesn't have faith in the law. His trust lies solely with Hana. Exhausted and injured from the intense fights, Do-gi collapses to the ground, slipping into unconsciousness. In the hospital corridor, Goen anxiously waits while Jin-Ian undergoes surgery. When the doctor exits the operating room, he delivers grim news. The internal bleeding has been controlled, but Jin-Ian's organs have sustained severe damage. According to him, things aren't looking too bright now. As Goen wanders through the hospital, she unexpectedly encounters Sung Chul and Kyung-gu receiving medical attention. When they inquire about Jin-Ian's condition, Goen is overwhelmed with emotion. She can't contain her tears, conveying the gravity of the situation. On the other hand, Baek arrives at the police station where Hana is already interrogating Suk-tae. She presents incriminating evidence. A knife found at the scene containing traces of both Miho and Woo Seob's blood. That knife belongs to Suk-tae. However, Suk-tae denies his involvement, claiming his knife remains in his office and could have been used by anyone. Hana drops a bombshell at him, revealing a witness to the events. Young-tae is brought into the interrogation room. As Young-tae begins implicating Suk-tae in the murders of Woo Seob and Miho, Suk-tae is taken aback. Young-tae asserts that Suk-tae and Baek forced him into their illicit activities, painting them as the masterminds. With none admitting to the murders, Hana proposes a resolution. Regardless of who physically carried out the stabbings, both brothers will face equal punishment for planning the murders of Woo Seob and Miho. In a later encounter, Hana meets Officer Dong-pil, who is on his way out as he's been assigned a new case. Before departing, he congratulates Hana on her achievements and tasks her with capturing Do-gi. If she fails to do so, he asserts his intention to take matters into his own hands. The next day, Do-gi regains consciousness in the hospital, greeted by the presence of Goen, Sung Chul, and Kyung-gu. Anxious about Jin-Ian's condition, Do-gi inquires about his friend. Kyung-gu reassures him that Jin-Ian is still in the ICU but is expected to awaken soon. Later, Sung Chul meets with Baek in the prison. She threatens to expose him, to which Sung Chul responds that she should tell the police everything. It is because this is the only way to cut off the tie between them. Attempting to unsettle him, Beck brings up the topic of revenge against Oh Chul-young, the murderer of Sung Chul's parents. She claims that Sung Chul, despite pretending to forgive the culprit, secretly harbors a desire for revenge. Rather than responding verbally, Sung Chul leaves the room with a subtle smile, choosing silence as his powerful response. In a meeting with the deluxe service team, Sung Chul tells everyone they might get summoned for questioning soon. He has decided to shut down their service, saying it is all his fault. According to him, regardless of their intention, violence brought more violence, and revenge breeds revenge. As the president of the company, he has decided to take full responsibility for everything they have done until now. However, the team members refuse to allow Sung Chul to bear all the responsibility. They express their willingness to take accountability for their actions. Sung Chul cautions them about the importance of being realistic. He highlights that if they end up arrested, no one will look after Jin Ian. In a moment of lightness, Kyung-gu jokes that Jin Ian can handle himself. Amid their discussion, Kyung-gu receives a call from the hospital. Jin Ian has regained consciousness. The team rushes to the hospital, where they gather around Jin Ian, relieved to see him all right and remembering everyone. Grateful for their support, Jin Ian thanks Do-gi for his unwavering assistance. Later, Hannah interrogates manager Lee and asks where he has been all this time. Lee responds that he has been imprisoned by Beck, Sung Chul, and Do-gi. Hannah cannot understand what's happening because if Do-gi and Sung Chul were accomplices of Beck, then why would they assist the police in her capture? Manager Lee then reveals how Do-gi locked them all up in a prison where they couldn't stand or lie down with their legs stretched out. He explains how he was always cold and starving. All they had to eat was a few biscuits and some health supplement pills. Lee paints a harrowing picture, asserting that they were treated inhumanely in the prison. Hannah still can't understand the situation. If he is telling the truth, why can't he remember the prison's location? After the interrogation, Hannah sees Do-gi in the hallway waiting for him. Do-gi asks for her time, saying he wants to tell her something. First, Hannah has to pay a visit to Jung-suk, who was found by the cops and is now in the mental hospital. Taking the doctor's permission, Hannah meets Jung-suk and tries to find out where she was when she disappeared. She shows her the photograph of Beck. Jung-suk responds that Beck is the owner of the hotel where she stayed. It seems like the confinement has impacted her memory too. When Hannah points out Do-gi, Jung-suk says hi but can't even remember who he is. However, when Hannah talks about prison, Jung-suk gets scared and begins begging for mercy. Later, Do-gi takes Hannah to the private prison, whose opening is through a bathroom. As she enters the prison, she manages to understand that manager Lee was right all along. As Hannah explores the prison, Do-gi comes up to her with disappointment on his face. He reveals to her how he abducted and brought the prisoners here and how Miss Beck managed them. Hannah can't believe what she is hearing. Although she realizes that those prisoners were all criminals, that doesn't justify the treatment they got in the prison. Infuriated by how Do-gi did the whole thing, Hannah leaves the prison with Do-gi following her. In a heartfelt moment, Do-gi interrupts Hannah and opens up about his emotions during that time. He confesses to Hannah how he treated those prisoners less than humans and reminded them every single day that everything they did was wrong. He hoped that they would be frightened enough to look back on what they did. However, Do-gi now admits that he failed in his mission. He is now ready to pay for his crimes, but wants Hannah to spare his colleagues. Hannah responds that she always thought the police needed someone like Do-gi, but upon learning the truth, she doesn't know what his true nature is anymore. She tells Do-gi that she will thoroughly investigate him, and once she is finished, she will call him. On the other hand, Sung Chul receives a mail which contains the draft of the book written by Oh Chul-young, the murderer of Sung Chul's parents and many others. Hannah receives the same book and is shocked to read more murder confessions by Chul-young. This makes Sung Chul visit Chul-young and ask if he really killed the woman and the teenager he mentioned in the book. The woman who got killed turned out to be Do-gi's mother. When Sung Chul asks why he is confessing to those murders now, Chul-young responds that he got lonely, and that's why he did that. When Sung Chul asks why he doesn't feel the pain of the victims and their families, Chul-young responds that he is so overwhelmed with his own emotions that there is no room for others. Hannah then calls forensic experts and asks if they can analyze the DNA found on the teenage girl who died 20 years ago. She then instructs the office to compare the data with Chul-young's DNA. Hannah then meets Jin Woo and informs him how some DNA evidence was found on the body of a teenage girl 20 years ago. It was too damaged to be analyzed with the technology back then, but now she had it compared with Chul-young's DNA sample. Surprisingly, the results match, showing that Chul Young was in fact the murderer. Jin Woo reveals that the man who was convicted of the murder was in prison for 20 years, and he served his full sentence and got out. As far as Jin Woo remembers, Chul Young was in prison then. However, Hannah reveals that he was granted leave around the time for his mother's funeral. Apparently, they monitored him 24 hours a day, and he never left the house during that period. However, since the victim's house was only 20 minutes away, it was easy for him to sneak out and return to the house. Jin Woo suspects that Chul Young might be the murderer of Dogi's mother, who also died that day. However, Hannah reveals that there is no evidence to prove that Chul Young did that murder too. Jin Woo instructs Hannah to continue the investigation but to keep it quiet until they are sure. In the hospital, Sung Chul receives a call from Jin Woo. He then informs the team about the information regarding Chul Young and Dogi's mother. However, he instructs them to keep the information to themselves until they know for sure. Jin Woo and Hannah then pay a visit to Chul Jin, the man who was wrongly convicted of the young girl's murder. They apologize to him on behalf of the prosecution and promise to make things easier for him. The Bluebird Foundation, under the prosecution service, will take care of all the expenses of Chul Jin's retrial. Chul Jin asks if the real culprit will be punished, to which Hannah reveals that his statute of limitations has expired, so Chul Young can't be punished for it. Chul Jin shares how he lost his family and friends all because of Chul Young. He is frustrated to know that the real culprit won't be punished. Jin Woo and Hannah once again apologize to him for everything he has gone through. As 20 years of his life were destroyed because of Chul Young, Chul Jin decides to take revenge on him. He contacts the deluxe taxi service, and Dogi happens to be the one closest to Sung Chul's phone. Dogi answers the call, discovering that someone is seeking vengeance against Chul Young. In the midst of this, Sung Chul arrives. Realizing that Sung Chul is a victim of Chul Young, Dogi attempts to persuade him to take on the case. Initially resistant, Sung Chul questions Dogi about his stance if someone sought revenge against his own enemy. Dogi asserts he wouldn't take the case, refusing to use someone else as a means for his own revenge. However, when Dogi insists, Sung Chul takes the game instructions from his drawer and gives them to Dogi, allowing him to take the case. Dogi then picks up Chul Jin and asks him about his story. Chul Jin shares a heart-wrenching tale of how his peaceful family lunch became a nightmare. Cops barged in, arresting him before his troubled family. He was then forced to confess that he was a murderer. When he denied it, he was tortured by the detective. Left with bruises all over his body, he had no option but to confess to the murder. Because of this, the judge gave him 20 years in prison. Hearing the judgment, he began screaming how he was forced to confess. However, no one listened to him. If that wasn't enough, his wife left him, saying that she couldn't let their child grow up as a murderer's daughter. Released 2 decades later, he faced the cruel reality of having no one to welcome him into freedom. He lived his remaining life as an ex-con until Jin Woo approached him and told him about Chul Young's confession. The law completely failed him and ruined his life. On top of that, the authorities can't punish anyone for it, not the detective who tortured him to get the fake confession, the prosecutor who ignored everything he said, or even the real killer they just found. Stopping the car, Dogi asks him if he still wants revenge, considering that Chul Young is already in prison and he may end up as a criminal. It turns out that Chul Jin doesn't want Chul Young's life but an apology from him. Given he has nothing else to lose, he is prepared to be branded a criminal again to make this happen. At the game station, Chul Jin takes the card from the envelope and initiates the game. Fairy informs him about the rules, after which Chul Jin chooses to take revenge on Chul Young. On the other hand, Hannah is interrogating Chul Young. She asks him if he really killed Dogi's mother. Chul Young responds that he takes pride in his work and doesn't take credit for things he didn't do. When asked why he confessed to the murder now, Chul Young blatantly utters that life was boring, and that's why he did that. When challenged to prove his words, he throws a curveball, requesting permission to hold Hannah's hands. Curious, Hannah agrees, and Chul Young reveals a chilling detail. He knows the victim's last words. According to him, Dogi, the victim's son, holds the key to verifying whether his mother uttered those words or not. Hannah decides to involve Dogi in the case so he can confirm if Chul Young is telling the truth. Before leaving, she reluctantly shakes hands with Chul Young as promised. As she's about to depart, he bizarrely comments on the warmth of her hands and indulges in a creepy act of smelling them and laughing. Unsettled, Hannah promptly washes her hands, eager to rid herself of any lingering connection to Chul Young. Meanwhile, Dogi heads to the police station seeking a meeting with Chul Young. only to be informed that visitors are currently prohibited. Just then, Hannah reaches out to Dogi, requesting a meeting. Thinking that Hannah has completed the investigation on him, he urges her to give him more time so he can finish a business. Hannah then informs him about the reason for their meeting. She tells Dogi how Chul Young has confessed to murdering his mother and that she needs his help in confirming that. A meeting is arranged with Chul Young, who instantly tells Dogi that he has killed his mother. Dogi counters, saying that he has already read up on his murder method. Chul Young desecrates the bodies after murdering the victim. To prove that he killed Dogi's mother, he begins repeating her last words, the words she shared with her son. She had called Dogi, excitedly mentioning she had prepared a stew for him. Struck by the painful familiarity, Dogi is overcome with shock, collapsing to the floor. Seizing the moment, Chul Young unveils the chilling reason behind using a different method to end the woman's life. A flashback reveals that when Dogi's mother left the room, she was attacked by Chul Young with a hammer. As she crumpled to the floor, Chul Young cruelly reveled in her suffering, laughing at her pain. Sensing the imminent danger to Dogi's life, the mother, even in her dire situation, lied to Chul Young. She claimed that her son was in the army and on his way home with friends, though he was coming alone. In a desperate attempt to prove her point, she shows him photographs of Dogi and his friends, leading him to believe that her son is not alone. Falling for the ruse, Chul Young drags her lifeless body inside and hastily departs the premises. As Dogi arrives, unaware of the tragedy that unfolded, Chul Young observes him from a distance. This was when he realized that Dogi's mother had lied to him. But now, the moment isn't opportune for him to launch an attack on Dogi. As Dogi is having a panic attack, Chul Young reveals that he was disappointed upon learning that Dogi's mother had lied to him. As the officers take the maniac killer out of the room, Dogi takes his medicine and regains control over his body. Filled with rage, he runs after Chul Young's vehicle but cannot catch him. Amid Dogi's overwhelming emotions, Hannah reminds him that it was his mother who shielded him that day, and her intention wasn't for Dogi to become a criminal seeking revenge. Overwhelmed by the painful truth, Dogi succumbs to the weight of the trauma. He sinks to his knees on the floor, reliving the pain all over again. Locked inside his apartment, he isolates himself, ignoring Goen's calls. It deepens her concerns as she becomes increasingly worried about his well-being. On the other hand, Sun Chul meets with Chul Young in order to ask him why he wants to publish the story of his murders. Chul Young responds that he is doing this because people can read his stories and understand him. Sun Chul then realizes that all Chul Young wants is people's attention. He wants to be praised by them. Sun Chul clarifies that his book won't even come into the world, and he will stop it at all costs. Sun Chul explains how people who lose their family members live their lives with a bomb inside of their hearts, and what Chul Young is about to do is light up that bomb. Before leaving, he tells Chul Young the reason behind his continuous visit to him. According to Sun Chul, he visited Chul Young not to forgive him but to find out more about him. That way, he can find a way to destroy Chul Young from the inside. Later, Dogi pays a visit to his mother's grave, after which he runs into Sun Chul. The two take a walk, talking their heart out. When Dogi shares that he doesn't know how to get revenge, Sun Chul responds that taking Chul Young's life at this point is more like showing him mercy. He tries to make Dogi understand that choosing the harsh way is not always the answer. The better example is Sun Chul himself. Dogi knows better than anyone how Sun Chul's desire to take revenge destroyed him. Sun Chul advises Dogi that true revenge isn't just about ruining the life of an enemy. It's about living one's life authentically. He has realized that when a person lives their life true to themselves, that's when their revenge is complete. However, they already have Chul Jin in their deluxe taxi, and once they meet a client they never look away from their case. So, it is decided that they will complete the case no matter what. Goen, Kyung-gu, and Jin Ian also decide to help the two take revenge on Chul Young. However, Sun Chul has decided that in this process of revenge, they are not going to break any laws. He admits being a bad boss earlier, but now he wants his team to give him their final trust. A meeting is held in the basement, and Sun Chul tells his team that they first need to stop Chul Young from publishing his book. The only one that can stop his insanity is his son. Over the last few years, Sun Chul continuously met with Chul Young and had many conversations with him. He managed to learn how much Chul Young loves his son. He is one of those psychopaths who have an excessive obsession with their children. The father and son separated a long time ago, so it is possible that they wouldn't know each other. Goen conducts research on Chul Young's son, Dong Chan, and makes a shocking discovery. Chul Young's son, Dong Chan, is working as a prison guard in the same prison where his father is confined. A flashback shows how Chul Young sent treats at Dong Chan's school. he would call Dong Chan and show his abundant love for him, but on the other side, he was committing murders and ruining the lives of others. Even after being held in prison, his insanity continued. He would act like he was having a seizure, and when Dong Chan would come inside, he would beat him up, unaware of the fact that Dong Chan is his own son. Dong Chan's mother has serious dementia, and she is in a nursing home. The nursing home fees and medication bills are substantial, for which Dong Chan has taken out a lot of private loans. Back in the present day, some men are beating Dong Chan up for not paying the loan back. As they are about to hit him hard, Dogi arrives and orders a meal. The goons attack Dogi, who retaliates and knocks down the two men in seconds. He then has dinner with Dong Chan, who offers him food as a thank you for saving him. When asked how he handles food carts alone, Dong Chan reveals how he helped his mother run a cart bar since childhood. When asked about his father, Dong Chan tells that he thought his father was dead, but he learned from his mother that he is still alive. Though angry at his father for leaving them, he misses him a lot, remembering how generous and kind he was. Hearing this, Dogi can't help but clench his fist in anger, realizing that Dong Chan knows nothing about his criminal father. Determined to help, Dogi offers to assist Dong Chan in finding his father. Surprised, Dong Chan inquires about Dogi's profession, and he casually mentions being a taxi driver. After bidding Dong Chan farewell, Dogi promptly calls Sun Chul, updating him on Dong Chan's unawareness regarding his father's true identity. The following day, as Dogi arrives at the jail to meet Chul Young, he runs into Dong Chan. When asked why he is here, Dogi reveals he is here to meet Chul Young. Dong Chan is shocked to learn that someone is actually looking for young Chul, the evilest of all the prisoners. Intrigued, Dogi poses a hypothetical scenario to Dong Chan, asking how he would react if he discovered his father was a wrong person. Dong Chan replies that while he might feel disappointed, he acknowledges that he can't deny the fact that he will still be his father. Dogi then meets Chul Young and tells him about his taxi business. He says that he takes special clients in a taxi and helps them take revenge. But this time, he makes it clear to Chul Young that his mission won't be for other people. When Chul Young asks if he is planning to kill him, Dogi only utters his son's name. Initially skeptical, Chul Young assumes Dogi is lying about knowing Dong Chan. As the truth dawns on him, Chul Young rises from his chair, attempting to intimidate Dogi. Failing in his threat, he then resorts to pleading, asking Dogi not to harm his son, insisting it wasn't Dong Chan's fault. Dogi coldly responds, pointing out that it wasn't his mother's fault either, yet Chul Young chose to end her life. When Dogi shares that he plans on telling Dong Chan about his father's reality, Chul Young kneels before him. Finally, he is begging Dogi not to tell his son about him. In exchange, he will do whatever Dogi says. Dogi's plan has finally made Chul Young realize that all he has been doing is wrong. Before leaving, Dogi instructs Chul Young to file for a transfer. Chul Young has to do whatever Dogi says. As Dogi is about to leave, Chul Young urges him to show him a photo of Dong Chan. However, Dogi laughs at him and leaves the room. On his way out, he meets Dong Chan, who urges Dogi not to disclose his food cart job to anyone, as civil servants can't have two jobs. Dogi assures him that he won't tell anyone. Dogi then takes Dong Chan for a walk and tells him about the hospital affiliated with the Blue Bird Foundation. Dong Chan is more than welcome to bring his mother to the hospital, where her treatment will be free. Dong Chul gets emotional hearing that someone cares for him this much. As tears stream down his eyes, he thanks Dogi for this unforgettable assistance. Dogi then seeks Hannah's assistance in speeding up the process of Chul Young's transfer. When Hannah learns that Chul Young's son works in the same prison, she is shocked. Hannah asks if Dogi is going to tell Chul Young about his son. Dogi responds that he won't tell Chul Young anything because whenever he misses him, he won't have a face to think of, which is his punishment. Days later, during Chul Young's transfer to another prison, he extends an apology to the prison guards for his past misbehavior. Unaware of the truth, he shakes hands with his own son, Dong Chan. After some days, Sun Chul receives a call from the hospital and learns about the death of Dong Chan's mother. He and Dogi pay a visit to Dong Chan at his mother's funeral only to find his leg and arm fractured. As Dong Chan mourns his significant loss, Sun Chul and Dogi decide to talk to Chul Young. Sun Chul pays a visit to Chul Young and informs him that he is the one behind his transfer. He then makes Chul Young remember the day of his transfer. A flashback reveals that when he extended his hand to shake hands with Dong Chan, he pulled him and broke his arm and leg. The other guards managed to stop him, but the damage was already done. Because of his injuries, Dong Chan couldn't pay a visit to his mother, who soon began feeling his absence. One day, she left the room looking for Dong-chan and fell from the stairs, resulting in her demise. Sung-chul tries to make Chul-young realize he has done something terrible. When he informs Chul-young that Dong-chan is his son, Chul-young scoffs at him, thinking he is lying. Sung-chul then shows him a picture of Dong-chan with his mother, shocking him. Sung-chul then makes him realize that he has taken away the only family his son had. With that said, he leaves the area, leaving Chul-young utterly devastated. On the other hand, Beck is enjoying over the fact that Chul-young killed Dogi's mother. When Hannah asks about the private prison, Beck responds that she had rented it out and didn't know what Sung-chul was doing on her property. However, Hannah reveals that there is no evidence showing Sung-chul was involved in the prison case. No CCTV footage shows Sung-chul's presence at the prison, thanks to Goen. Beck tells Hannah to interrogate the prisoners to know who the abductor is. Hannah responds that she can't believe a criminal as they might be conspiring against Sung-chul. Beck gets infuriated and warns Hannah not to be biased in the investigation. Sung-chul then gives Jin-woo a treat and confesses that the allegations against him were all true. Jin-woo was shocked to hear this as Sung-chul keeps telling him how he abducted criminals and confined them. Meanwhile, Hannah meets Dogi, who thinks that she is here to arrest him. However, she has made her choice and decides against charging Dogi. She tells him there's not enough evidence. A flashback shows that Hannah advised Beck not to involve Sung-chul and Dogi in the case because if she does so, she will be charged with abuse, abduction, and confinement. However, if she doesn't do so, she will be only punished for hiding criminals, making her sentence short. Although Hannah is breaching her duties, she claims it's worth it to help protect people like Dogi. Before leaving, Hannah hopes that when they meet again, they won't fight like before. The two smile at each other and say goodbye to a happening chapter of their lives. Hannah then decides to resign, thinking she is not qualified to judge people by law. She then sees Miho's vision trying to tell her not to quit. As Hannah heads to Jin-woo's office to give him the resignation letter, she witnesses Jin-woo packing up his things. He has resigned from the job, just like Hannah. As he tears up her resignation letter, Hannah tells him how she is incompetent to be a prosecutor. However, Jin-woo orders her not to resign but to catch 100 more criminals like Beck, and she has to accomplish this task no matter what. As far as the deluxe taxi case is concerned, he has taken full responsibility for it and has resigned from the job. As the workers gather to say goodbye to Jin-woo, the new deputy chief prosector Do arrives to fill in Jin-woo's place. She seems strict as she orders all the prosecutors not to waste time saying goodbye but to report her in 10 minutes. Everybody leaves, but Hannah still stands there doing things her way as she always did. Advising Hannah to keep doing the great work, Jin-woo says goodbye to her and leaves the office, ending the most important chapter of his life. In the basement, the deluxe taxi team's last meeting is going on, and everybody is telling their future plans. Kyung-gu and Jin-ian will return to their previous jobs, while Goen plans to take the civil service exam. As good luck, Dogi gives her some chocolates for her new life journey. When Sung-chul asks what his plans are, Dogi responds that he will travel and go where his feet take him. Sung-chul himself plans to stay where he belongs and run his taxi service company. He wishes everyone the best of luck and thanks them for their unwavering love and support. Later, Dogi and Goen spend some time together, reminiscing about their time in the deluxe taxi company. Goen thanks Dogi for his support because he was there for her whenever things were tough. Meanwhile, Sung-chul puts covers on the taxi and the bike and turns off the light of the headquarters, marking an end to his deluxe taxi era. Days later, Chul-young is taken to court, where Jin-woo once again asks him about his confession of the murders. This time, Chul-young seems genuinely sorry as he accepts murdering people with guilt on his face. He then kneels and apologizes to Chul-jin for ruining his life and making him spend 20 years in prison. 20 years ago, Chul-jin left the court with police officers, but now he is leaving with his family, happy and more alive than ever. After the retrial, Jin-woo and Sung-chul discuss how the twin brothers are sentenced to life, and Beck got 10 years. The 30 years of their friendship continue to flourish as the duo shares laughter and enjoys each other's company. Meanwhile, Hannah is immersed in dealing with criminals, and her new target is Beck's sister, accused of running a prostitution business. Similar to her sister, she claims innocence, asserting that she only rented out the property and wasn't aware of the activities. However, she offers to cooperate with Hannah on the condition that Beck remains in jail. A year has passed, and Dogi is spending his life traveling, pitching a tent in a park and admiring the views. He is still in touch with Sung-chul, whom he sees as a fatherly figure. Goen passes her civil test and works as a police officer. Kyungkoo works on a race course while Ji Neon winds up working at what's assumed to be NADA, the South Korean space agency. Hannah appears to have been promoted at work. Back in the twins' case undergo a retrial, but the judgment remains the same. The twins are sentenced to spend their lives in prison, while Beck receives an additional 10 years to her sentence, leaving her shocked and dismayed. Despite Hannah's best efforts to combat crime, a new wave of criminal activities emerges. Murders have become a daily occurrence, and there are even instances of people discarding briefcases with children inside. Fortunately, one of the children is rescued by none other than Dogi. One day, all the characters receive a message on their pagers, prompting them to gather at Sungchul's hideout again. Surprisingly, they have resumed working at Deluxe Taxi, and the team has expanded, with Hannah joining their ranks. Sungchul's team has shifted their approach to tackling crime, opting to operate strictly within the bounds of the law. This marks the conclusion of the drama, as they unite to control and address the surge in criminal activities.